Good evening, everyone. I'm Barney Arnold, the Chair of the Select Board, and we are meeting tonight, Tuesday, September 27th. First, I'd like to review the agenda. We'll start with community input. So if there's anyone either online or in the room here that would like to make a comment when I'm done reviewing the agenda, please indicate you'd like to do so. And then our first agenda item is an update from the police department, and Chief Fisher is here. Then we'll talk with the town clerk about the vote she needs to approve early voting. And we are very happy to have the Historical Commission here with us tonight, as one of our efforts is to just periodically have different boards and commissions come in to share with us what they're doing and what their needs might be and how they are thinking about the master plan. Then we're going to be joined by Madeline Blake and Jack Trost for a discussion about further implementation of the master plan. I have an update from Ryan about the search for the assistant town administrator, a regionalization, just a discussion from MAPC about how we might go about a regionalization study. Then appointments and resignations, the town administrator's report, liaison reports, cemetery deed transfers, minutes, and then we will close for an executive session, and we will not reopen following the executive session. So that's our agenda for this evening. Is there anyone online that is interested in making a comment, providing with some input? Seeing none, is anyone here interested in making a comment? All right, seeing none, then I'd like to welcome Chief Fisher. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, all. Thanks for having me. While there's many more exciting things going on in the police department than some other news I have, like our test this Saturday and all the good work our members do, I did ask for this time to talk about a serious matter, and I'd like to read a letter, if you wouldn't mind, if you would indulge me. And this letter, of course, is addressed to you, Barney, but it's to all members of the Select Board. And this is a letter of resignation and appreciation. Please accept this letter as formal notice of my resignation as police chief in Carlisle. I accepted an offer from the town of Bedford, our neighbor here, to be their next police chief, and therefore must reluctantly resign from Carlisle. I expect to start in Bedford later this fall and will work with you to ensure a smooth transition. I toiled over this decision because citizens of Carlisle, including and especially members of this board and the people who've sat at this board during my time, have welcomed and supported me for over 11 years. I'm also tremendously appreciative of and proud of the members of the police and dispatch departments. I'm forever grateful for their dedication to our citizens, and it was my great privilege to work with them. Thank you again for allowing me to serve as your chief of police in Carlisle. I'd like to give you this letter at this time. If you would indulge me, I have a couple of other thoughts, and I appreciate this time. I know that everyone's time is valuable, because I have a couple of thoughts of appreciation, a couple of things I won't miss, and then a closing favor to ask. And my thoughts of appreciation are many, and it's while I'm addressing these thoughts to you, these thoughts are actually to our citizens in Carlisle, especially the citizens of Carlisle, because it's been my great privilege to work with some of the kindest and most dedicated people I know here in Carlisle. In the coming weeks and months, I look forward to letting them all know personally how I feel. But and I've practiced this 100 times and I'm still getting choked up. It's important to me that the citizens of Carlisle know how much I appreciate what they provide to my family. You know, it's kind of an insult in our profession, maybe at a car stop, when someone says, you know, I pay your salary. But at this moment, it's important for me to remind everyone that I am appreciative that they did pay my salary. When I got here, I had an elementary school kids and a middle schooler, and the citizens of Carlisle now have a Navy pilot, a computer scientist who works on government projects, and a critical care nurse in Boston. And through their generous tax dollars, I'll be forever appreciative. And those citizens should know that their money was well spent, I hope. I've met with and worked with some of the finest public servants I know. Citizens that serve on the boards and committees, people who work here in town hall, schools, DPW, library, fire department, police and dispatch. A couple things I won't miss. I will not miss the 2 years during the pandemic when I was pacing my house at night with our other LAPC members, worried about whether we're doing the right thing here in Carlisle. I will also not miss sleeping on my couch during snowstorms in the office. Hope the next chief gets a more comfortable couch. And the last thing I ask of you is a favor, that whoever you get to occupy my seat next cares as deeply for the citizens of this town, the members of my police and dispatch, and the job we have to do here in Carlisle. So that's one favor I'm asking of all of you. And I ask your indulgence on that favor. Thank you very much.
Gosh, John, yeah, stay here. I know, take a deep breath and,
I practiced this like 20 times.
yeah,
I think I could get through this without just getting choked up, but thank you.
well, we're all feeling that same sense of the emotion and the difficulty of having you leave Carlisle as our chief of police. And I know we'll have more opportunities to celebrate what you have brought to our town and the legacy that you will leave in terms of, the great police department and dispatch department, and also just the impact that you've had on really everybody in our community, even if they've never met you, with the kind of service and commitment, and just good sense of humor, even with all the puns. You're an extraordinary person and also an extraordinary police officer that we have been really blessed to have in our town for as long as we've had you. And we're just thankful that we have had you for 11 and a half years. It'll be very hard for all of us to see you go, but I know it's the best decision for you and your family. And I personally know how deeply you've thought about this and all the discussions that we've had here on the select board. So, we've all thought very carefully about this. And so I will stop there and see if anyone else from the select board would like to offer any thoughts at this point. But of course, as I say, don't you worry, we won't let you get away without lots of celebration and roasting and other things, and lots of paraphernalia to take with you that you have to promise you'll wear in Bedford occasionally, just to let them know that Carlisle's still watching. So anyone else here would like to offer a comment now? Or?
I'd brief comment to say that there's no question that this town will miss you. You delivered the strategic leadership during COVID. Those 2 years you didn't miss. We certainly couldn't have done without you during those 2 years. And you led with aplomb and with the sense of humor that Barney referred to. And you're leaving some very big shoes to fill, and we'll never find anybody with less hair.
That's there you go.
Nathan, would you like to comment?
I would like to, and the benefit of, I hope anyway, the benefit of me having to be remote right now is that people can't tell that I'm crying. John, I think, I hope you know how much I think of you and, what you have done, not only for this town, but in mentoring me in so many ways. Your family and, I know that we will keep in touch, but this is just a tremendous loss for the town of Carlisle. And, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done for both me personally and for this town.
Well, thanks, gang. Sorry that took so long.
John,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry, Dave.
well, just, I mean, it's been said, but you brought a level of professionalism and structure and process to what is one of the most important services that a town can offer its citizens. And we're not a high crime town and we don't have some of the challenges that many communities have, fortunately, but I think your view, your way of analyzing issues and dealing with them is really superb. You're a hardworking guy, you're humble, you lead by example. I think that's the best I can say is, you're a true leader. And I know it because all of us and all the citizens respect you. I know that your staff, your policemen, your police officers respect you. And especially also all your peers in law enforcement in the region respect you because they elected you to leadership. So it's a huge loss. We were very fortunate, I think, as a town to punch above our weight, so to speak, with someone of your caliber running our police department. Bedford's getting, a gem, and we're still neighbors. So hopefully, you can help us out. But yeah, it just, I wish you all the best in the remaining years of your career. I think it's a good move for you personally. And you'll certainly be missed. And but you've taught us a lot about how it should be done, and we'll never forget that. So thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much. Excellent work. And I think the only thing I could add is how classy you've handled this exit. It's unbelievable. You're really remarkable in that way. So thank you.
Well, I've been tremendously fortunate. I spent a lot of time talking to my peers, people in town about how lucky I am, about how lucky we are to have this town. But I tell you, I keep going back to this. The thing that I'm most lucky about is the people that work at the police department and dispatch center. David talked about punching above my weight. My people are the best, not my people. Our people at the police department and our people that work in dispatch are just some of the finest people I know and do some of the finest work that it just made my life so much easier. And it made my life easier working with the caliber and the class of the people here. So I really wanted to go out, and I know I talked to Barney about this, is making sure that the citizens of Carlisle know how appreciative I am, and you know how appreciative I am. Because Judy and I, when we made this decision for me to come here, this was a big deal, and it's turned out to be so much better than I ever could have imagined. So thank you.
That's great,
you.
Chief. Thank you. Okay, everyone take a deep breath here. And Peggy, would you like to come up and tell us about the early voting? Thank you.
Back to follow.
Early voting in person.
Excuse me, early
I always
voting
say
in
that.
person, yeah.
So I'm proposing a very different hours than last time. I found that in the September election, we did not have many people come for the morning sessions that we did.
Okay,
We had 2 morning sessions last time. 7 came in 2 hours and 9, 2 hours in the other one. So I shifted this around this time so we have more later in the day. And again, I'm proposing to do Saturdays. I'm only have to do one day on the weekend, and I don't want to do Sunday.
okay.
All right, I move that the select board vote to approve the town clerk's recommendation that the hours and dates for early voting in person for November 8, 2022 general election be as follows. Saturday, 10/22/2022 at 12 to 4 p.m. Monday, 10/24 at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Tuesday, 10/25, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, 10/26, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Thursday, 10/27, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Friday, 10/28, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, 10/29, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday, 10/31, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Tuesday, 11/1, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, 11/2, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Thursday, 11/3, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. and Friday, 11/4, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Second,
Thank you, Nathan. Nathan seconded. Any discussion? All
I
right,
just want to say, to Peggy and all the volunteers and all the staff who make this happen. Oh my God, look at that schedule. Thank you so much.
Yes.
yes, that's from all of us.
Well, it's the volunteers that do so much work for us. Without our volunteers, we wouldn't be able to have an election. So
Yeah,
they
it's
really
just,
they deserve so much of the credit.
Yeah.
it's just awesome.
Do you have a volunteer coordinator? Because, I mean, even just getting the volunteers is a huge job.
We do
You
the
have-
sign up through Sign Up Genius.
Okay,
So that coordinate, have you seen that?
Yeah, yeah,
program?
yeah.
Yeah, that works
No.
very well.
excellent,
So we're doing,
great.
yeah.
Because we used to have to, in the day,
No.
we used to be,
No, that Sign Up Genius makes it
Yeah.
so much easier.
okay, great,
Yeah.
perfect.
Good. All right, well, hearing no further discussion, we'll do this by roll call. David, I just let the record show David Modell has stepped out of the room. So we'll begin the roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
So the motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
Great.
Peggy.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy.
All right. Well, so now we're really delighted to have the Historical Commission, some of the members come join us, and whoever's here from the commission, why don't you come on up and take a seat? You'll have to share the mic back and forth, and maybe you start by
Actually,
introducing
there's a
yourself.
second mic there.
Oh, that's an extra one, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, why don't you bring that over, Annette? Yeah, perfect. And just make sure the
Yeah,
little
it's
green
on.
light is on,
It's on.
it.
Yep, it's on.
Okay, great. Now, Annette, do you want to
Yep.
start by?
I will. I'll start by
Okay.
introducing myself. I'm Annette Lee. It's great to meet Ryan, who I've not yet met.
I'm sorry, Annette, could you just lean
You
a
need to
little
lean into
closer
the
to
mic.
Or pull it
Annette.
I'm
closer
sorry.
to you, Annette. Yeah, get a little closer.
Sorry, Nathan. I was just saying hi to everybody and introducing myself. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm Chip Doing, and glad to be here as well, and glad to answer questions as they may arise. Ryan requested that we come to address one particular issue that he has, and that is to try to find a home for some of the antiques. I use that term very generally, but I gather there's an old safe here in town hall, right?
In the
And
corner.
and things like that, as it turns out, really is not our kind of interest. I shouldn't say interest, but it's not our concern. Our concern would be it finds a place, but it would be more with a historical society, not historical commission. We don't curate, we don't have a place for that to go. So it's fundamentally not in our purview. So we would suggest, and he may think otherwise, but Dana Booth, who is very active with the Historical Society, might be a good contact to see if there's something that the Historical Society would like to include in their collection.
So I guess this is my fault, if I may speak, Barney.
Sure.
The historic, I had requested that we reach out to you, because the Historical Society, the Historical Commission, as I understand it. We don't have a historic district commission, we have a historic commission. And so you are our advisors on kind of all things historic. And so when we were talking about, we did the scales, we gave those to the Historical Society, and the next one was the vault. And I said, have we talked to the Historical Commission? Like, do we know what the history is behind this? Have we talked to the Historical Commission about it? Because, you are our advisors on all things historic within the town, because, again, it's not Historic District Commission, it's an overall historic commission. And so I think where you have authority is within the historic district, but where you have advisory is kind of throughout the town. And that's why I had just, for those individual items anyway, I had just said, have we just run anything by them? Do they think it's okay for us to, to give this historical society? I would think it would be, but I just thought we should run it by you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yep.
Nathan, I think that was a great idea, and I appreciate allowing us to have input, and I hope we'll be continually asked about these things. And then we'll try to sort of filter out to whom we think this might be most helpful. And might be able to do it.
Yeah,
So
and I
while you're-
agree, you're not in the business of curating anything, right? You're not, that's
Right.
not what you do, and the Historical Society does do that, but I just thought we should chat.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and we're really glad to have you here too, because we'd like to hear a little bit about what the commission's current projects are, and then also, are there ways that the select board or other staff here in town hall could be helpful? Are there resources that might be helpful or support that you'd need? And lastly, we'd love to hear also what your thinking is about the Carlisle Master Plan, and if there's anything in that plan that you could imagine the commission being involved in.
Well, I was just gonna say, my initial thought of what the commission, the board could do is that to give us a little bit of gravitas. Very often people just go off and do what they're gonna do, and there's very little recourse that we actually have. So to sort of give us that level of credibility where there's consequences for people just going about doing what they're gonna do, having never consulted us. I don't know if you all noticed that one of the buildings, when they were trying to sort of fix, quote unquote, where there was some missing granite, painted it sky blue in this historic house. So
Oh, goodness.
we just sort of were aghast and said, what do we do now? And right now the tavern on the green is coming up for sale. Well, it is for sale right now. And there are many, many changes that are proposed.
This is the one on the corner here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just sort of think we're sort of always wanting to allow the homeowner to do as much as they can with their own property, but also preserving what the town has expected us to do, which is to keep the center within, how would I describe it? What they've expected it to be all these years. So to allow there to be a bit of change, but also to allow and the hope that it stays pretty much the same, at least visually in the front, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I'd say in the aggregate, we've represented the town in a way that may not be absolutely perfect. We have to compromise on issues that certainly, if it involves cost, we feel as if we can't dictate or mandate anything is going to be a hardship from a cost point of view. But we've been blessed with a lot of very willing district residents that really want to do the right thing. And they know when they bought the house, at least the large majority of them know what's involved in making changes to their house, which is pretty important. As Annette was, sort of implying that we sometimes find ourselves in an awkward position where somebody does something and it's after the fact, we don't have any So that's awkward. And we do our best to follow up with something that's maybe happened before, ahead of us. And we also think we could do a better job of getting getting all the members of the district sort of understanding what their responsibilities are as being a homeowner or a property owner in the district. So that's really our role and our responsibility to make sure that there's a good connection. We don't want to be the police,
Right.
for the district, although some people think we are, so.
And I also think our role is to sort of encompass all these new people who do have historic houses. It's a very unique situation, and they're not, as was just mentioned, they're not all just in the center. So I feel that those of us who live in historic houses should be welcoming and almost mentor some of the other people, so that here on our commission now, we encourage people to come and just discuss it with us, not to immediately come for a hearing, but to come and just discuss what their plans are, which is the case in point with this person who's a prospective buyer for the new tavern. They wanted to just say, how would we respond to this? And we tried to the best of our ability, but it's that in that particular case, there are a lot of changes.
Mm.
And we just can't address them right now before to guarantee that that's the reason they should buy it. We can't say we're going to approve everything.
And how does what's the process for someone who's buying a home to learn that it's in the historic district and what that means?
Well, it's
Sure.
really the realtor's responsibility to let them know that it's in the district, and there are responsibilities that go along with that.
And we try to get letters out to them
Yeah,
yearly, just to say, these are the kinds of things you would need to come before the commission, so that a lot of people
To
actually.
current homeowners in the
current
district.
homeowners
Yeah,
really don't know what the full responsibility is.
yeah.
So we feel that part of our job is also to educate them in terms of what our expectations are in terms of maintaining an antique house.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. We have an historic district and we have an historic commission, but we don't have an historic district commission. So
Well, I
I'm a
think
little
we do.
confused.
I think we.
No, we do. So
Well, that's
there,
not what I
there are
was
two
thinking
different-
earlier. Okay.
there,
go ahead.
there are two different types of, so a town can adopt a historic district commission, which is responsible for the decided upon and voted upon historic district. Or they can adopt an historic commission, which is responsible for the historic district, if you have one, and responsible overall advisory for historic. I'm sorry about the dog barking. They're responsible overall for advisory outside of the district on historic matters. And the town voted to have the second historic commission. So it's more far reaching than a historic district commission, but it incorporates the historic district commission.
Okay.
Does that make
All right.
sense?
Yeah, now because somebody was making all these distinctions and I was trying to figure out what the distinction.
The lion's share
exactly.
of our work.
That was me.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. And so you don't feel you have any authority, but you do have statutory authority in the historic district if there's a house or if it's registered.
Right.
Is
but
that right?
Trying to remain a good neighbor.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah. Yeah, and it's delicate because honestly, when those houses were built, whenever there was any new technology, in terms of heating,
Right.
they hastened to, put it in. So
Yeah.
I know
right.
my daughter is in a 1700s house in Brookline, and when she wanted to put in a new heating system, because there was going to be an event that could be seen, the historic district didn't want her to do it. But I think there's
keep
a
up with
really
the times.
fine line
Well, that's what I
between,
was trying to
yeah,
inarticulately trying to say, but
yeah.
that's exactly it. I mean, let's
It-
honor with the way people are living now and yet maintain.
Yeah,
for the
so
rest
that,
of
and that does require discussion
Mhm.
and communication and having people come in earlier rather than later, so that you can work with them.
Yeah, I
As long
think
as it's, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Bart.
Well, I was just gonna say, as long as it's collegial, and not like thou shalt, because a lot of it is also subjective.
Sure it is. Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep.
that's where it feelings get hurt and,
Appropriate is a catch-all, and
Yeah.
who's to say what's appropriate and what's not?
Yeah.
So
I'm
the
sorry, Nathan.
earlier we get at it, the better, so it doesn't get ahead of us and suddenly we feel like we're sort of in a corner. So to Annette's point, we very, very much encourage a preview of their intentions before it goes to a hearing.
Mhm.
Solar panels is a great example,
Right.
But
certainly,
also some of the new materials. I
yeah,
mean,
of course, yeah.
it's not just clapboard on these houses anymore. And
AZAC, yes, vinyl, no. Yeah.
but that's a subject
Yeah.
that's.
Well, it is, but it's because the vinyl is shiny and the AZAC isn't, and it looks more historic, and you can put it in and people, unless they go up and touch it and feel it, can't tell the
Or
difference.
the Harding, now the Hardys.
Very clever, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, good.
So how busy are you?
Really good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but we only meet once a month, unlike select board, which is much more often than that. So one of the biggest challenges is that, the frequency of our meetings. We're not begging to do more meetings, but it's sometimes hard, given the sort of the amount of time required to advertise and that sort of thing. Some people can say, we'd like to be on your next agenda, and they realize that if they've missed the deadline date for publication, it could put them out another 7 weeks. 'Cause
Yeah.
Which is another bone of contention, because I have this worker who'll say, construction guy who'll say, I have on Thursday, until Monday, I could do this. But it doesn't work that way, sadly, given our system. We have to make it aware, everybody in the town aware that this is gonna happen in our public notices.
Mhm.
So we can't just allow that to happen. As Chip said, we might have to wait a month or two if this is
Just approval.
just approval.
Yeah.
And is this, is all this done electronically in terms of people making putting forward a
Mostly.
proposal and then, yeah.
Yep. And Janine Bloom, who's been our our administrator for 5 months.
Yeah,
Something like,
great.
she's just
Good.
terrific. Yeah.
Good.
She does so much of the administrative work that used to be quite a burden for us, and we feel as if we can sort of stay ahead of the approvals process with Janine's input. She's been great.
And I
Yeah.
think the other thing for us all to think about as a town, I mean, there are other projects like the burial ground. We've all wanted to work on that. We made a proposal at one point and it was denied.
Proposal to,
To what changes should happen to the burial ground. There was some talk about taking down trees. There was talking about preserving
This is
stone.
the one that's next to the fire, the
Right.
police
Exactly.
department.
but who did you make the proposal to?
The Board of Selectmen,
Pardon?
Selectmen.
What,
the Board of
Selectmen.
Selectmen and CPC.
Yeah,
how long ago was that?
do you think, Nathan, like 5 years ago?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know, maybe Kate was on,
Right.
but maybe not. So I'm not sure how long, Kate, you've been on. It's been a
I've been on
while.
5 years. I'm trying to remember.
The only
Yeah, I
reason I
think
bring it up
It's
is.
Yeah.
right around that time frame, and
Right. Nathan, I was just saying, the only reason I bring it up is we'd love to sort of have our reach go a little bit further than just these, paint chips. There are sort of bigger projects that we think, and that
Mhm.
maybe that's where the master plan comes into play.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how you think about the master plan and whether that
Yeah, no,
is,
it's a fair question.
factoring into your,
We've had a chance to review it a couple of times. And
Yeah.
I would say that our input has been rather small in terms of the master plan. We did have some feedback, but it was minimal, I would say. Not that we're not interested in it, but in terms of our own input, it was, I would say,
I think you're
rather minimal.
completely right.
Yeah.
It was minimal in
In
what?
what we contributed.
Uh-huh.
It's not that the master plan didn't provide us that opportunity.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think we weren't quite sure how to.
How to, work our way into it.
articulate
Yeah.
how-
Yeah.
The town common or the town green or whatever we're calling it is a pretty good example of how the interface between all parties in town need to sort of come together on a plan for that, because changes being made there sometimes are outside of a master plan.
Hmm.
Master plan just for the common. I mean, trees get planted and trees get taken down, and so that would be a good example of how we might interface with the master plan,
Uh-huh.
with the master plan of the common on its own. We had Dana Booth come in and present two chestnut trees, and he thinks they were replacing trees that died, but didn't seem like he was absolutely sure of that. But
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is that just in terms of the common, that it would be a good thing to get the sort of
Get a
appropriate
plan.
parties together.
So,
Yeah.
and there have been committees,
Uh-huh.
but it's sort of classic that, people get really excited about it and then it wanes and then the project doesn't happen and then it's forgotten because years have passed. So
Uh-huh.
sort of have to stay on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Others that
I think
have,
it's more.
yeah, there's water right in the closet there. Yeah.
I'm just racking my brains about the burial ground one and
And what
trying to
you say, it
remember.
wasn't approved, so it didn't get approved by the CPC? Or the CPC
Yeah.
approved it, but then the select board did not, or
That's not,
maybe
Didn't it
Nathan,
go
I
to
don't know
town
if
meet-
you
didn't
remember.
even-
Did it go to town meeting?
Nathan, didn't it? It's been so long now.
I think CPC approved cutting down a whole bunch of trees in their opposition.
There were citizens who were opposed,
Miscommunication.
yeah, because
right?
I think,
Hang on,
Can you all
John and Jack if you want to offer a comment, that'd be great, but if you come up to a mic, only because then all the people online can't hear.
can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
yes, we can.
Okay, I think AirPod stopped working. I think it was a long time ago. I think it was also just very difficult timing because there were so many things about CPC in that year and it was quite expensive. And so I think the select board decided, let's wait a little bit.
Right. Where
Um,
we could have pared the whole thing down and done a portion of it, none of it got done.
Right. Can I just say a couple things overall? If that be
Yes.
okay, Barney?
Yes,
You know,
Please do.
so I think one of the things I'll say is just, in full disclosure, I'm a little biased. I was on historical commission for, I think, 4 years, 5 years, something like that. And I was chair for most of those. And so I think it is a difficult role because there is a lot of act now and ask for forgiveness later that the historical commission's always having to deal with. And I think also, I think the historical commission is seen as it has to be perfectly historic, but I've met with them, I think, a couple times since, and it's clear to me that they don't see the center of town as a museum, but as a place where people live, and kind of a little bit of today's history is, today's doings is tomorrow's history. And so I think there's an awful lot of reasonableness that goes on as long as it is remaining true to the historic nature of the center of town. I'm not sure where we are now, Annette, but when I was on, Inspector Luther was the building inspector, and we got him to the point where, well, first of all, let me just say, I think it's just absolutely critical that the Board of Selectmen do everything they can to support the Historic Commission, the town voted them in. We didn't create this board. The town voted to create it. And I think that we need to support them. And one of the ways would be, I don't know if John Mativier is doing the same thing, but Luther would not issue a permit unless he knew that it had gone through or was in the process of going through, or he knew that the person was going to be talking to the historic commission.
Right. Very,
Um,
very important.
Yeah.
And that would, I think that would go a long way in helping. And then just making sure that people know that the historic commission has our backing, they are there because the town voted them in. And we have a historic district because the town voted to have one. And so I think it's upon us to make sure that we're supporting that commission that is, doing the service that was created by town vote.
Do you all have a close relationship with John Mativier? Are you all in?
Sure, I mean, when
Discussion with
needed,
him?
we've got a
Yeah.
couple of things that we're bringing to him now that will be important. Some of it, the permitting is sort of the gatekeeper,
Right.
a permit, but there are a lot of things that get done in the district that don't require a permit.
Uh-huh.
So we don't have the benefit of that gatekeeper with
Mhm.
the building department that we would like. So we're wide open to thoughts on this, but I think we have to do our own messaging to the district to let them know that we're here to help them and not to be overly tough on them. But if it happens that someone does something before we've had a chance to review it, then Annette was implying, what do we do? I
Yeah,
mean,
do you have any, nothing in the statute about your authority or?
I'm trying to think if there is a capacity to fine, but then again, we go back to the issue we talked about initially, which is, that's not a great,
Right, you don't want to
relationship.
have, right,
Right.
right.
But
right.
technically, they can have the work undone and they can do a daily fine.
Huh.
right?
Technically.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's the operative
Yeah.
word.
Very hard to do in this smaller town.
Right.
Yeah,
um,
you have much more control when there is a permit, and especially if they need an occupancy,
Exactly.
then they don't get occupancy if
Very
they haven't
important. Right, Kate.
right,
done.
But that has to be a pretty big project.
Yeah,
for it to
that's a
Yeah.
big project.
yeah,
that threshold, but
right.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you have a comment?
I do. So it's great to meet you.
Right, right.
In thinking and writing notes for this meeting, one of the ways that I believe that this historic commission can connect better to the master plan is through education of staff and boards. So we are putting together land use meetings where those departments are working together to talk about projects as they exist, and it would be great to come in and maybe talk to those boards, and a lot of them already know, but just generally educate everybody on here's what you're looking for when projects come in, when permits come in, and other things. That would improve the efficiency of the permitting process, which would take away a lot of the need to
sure, yep.
try and go around, right? Because everybody wants to go things fast. But we also would love to get together land use chairs in one of our monthly meeting, and then maybe talk to other boards and committees about how your role fits with theirs, and that would help create more of a shared understanding of the historic commission's role and how the other boards and committees can support you. I believe connecting those departments is extremely important for the future of the town from many different angles. And a great example is the ADA ramp at the police department, which we're working through now, trying to go after the fact and make sure that the plan matches, so that I'll think we should be doing that first, so that that project just goes through.
Right,
And
right.
I think that's, education for me and for other departments. With that education, we would do better. So
Yeah, I must say, we've had some recent dialogue with the town council, and they lively, is that? do I have that right?
Ethan
Ethan
Lively,
Dively.
Dively.
Lively, yes, thank you. Fabulous, response, quick and to the point, and what we can and can't do, and what he would advise. And I mean, how great is that to have access to someone that could, because we're not attorneys, but we could get ourselves in some hot water if we make too many assumptions about things. So we're very grateful for that. I don't know how, what kind of access we have. Is it possible to,
Be through the,
I mean, I
Typically, we,
don't know who pays the bills for
yeah, the
the.
town does. You do. We all do.
Yeah, so,
Um,
I mean, but it's not a, an open dialogue
You know,
unless.
usually, things would go through Ryan,
Right,
and
yeah.
unless you've already
Well,
said, we've got this project and we need to be talking to, and then once you
yeah.
have the go ahead, then you're free to talk about that project as
Right,
needed.
right.
I wish I was better prepared for this meeting because I really did not know that we were gonna have this conversation. Would have a lot to say about it. Because I'm really feeling very passionate about it. But I was just thinking, what happens to us often is it's in the 11th hour. Like with this ADA ramp, they wanted it, you all wanted it immediately. And so, but they weren't getting us the plans, so in this particular instance, we approved something with a lot of contingencies because we never got the plans,
Mm,
were never brought before us. And yet there was a deadline of when you all wanted it accomplished.
Yeah, right. So we drew plans with words. Is
Right.
what it turned out to be.
Which is not ideal.
yeah,
But it held them to a standard that we expect, and we were clear about if there's any deviation from that, they do it at their own risk. So
uh-huh.
that's our way of putting teeth into our approval process.
Yeah.
So
But that's just typical. That's just one example. I mean, there was a
Mhm.
bog house another time, or it was the dam, or whatever it is. You
Yeah.
know, they need to come before us. They need to make a decision. We don't have time to even really talk about it.
That's
So-
that coordination piece
Right.
that I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
That should be part of my procurement process. So has this been reviewed by you? Are we putting it out in the request for quotes and request for proposals ahead of time? So that the engineers and contractors are sending you the information you need in the beginning, so you don't feel like you're under the gun to make a decision.
Right.
I mean, too late for some of that now, and I think a lot of towns struggle with this, but putting together a land use checklist that accounts for you is one way that we can support and meet the goals of the master plan with the historic commission.
That would be marvelous.
well, I could, as like Annette, I could go on forever, but there is one great example of where we sort of have to meet a compromise with the town and the applicant, and that's the First Religious Society. They came before us last week, wanting to put another dish network up in the steeple, which is effectively invisible. So that wasn't the problem, but they have to put some ground mounted equipment in to service their other equipment. And that goes on the ground, and it's, there's a huge one there now that Verizon and maybe some of you don't even remember seeing this enclosure, but it's there. And so here we are, the greater good is what we're often balancing is the opportunity for the town to have better wireless service at the cost of having yet another piece of equipment on the ground. That's in the district. That's a good kind of example of where we have to kind of adjudicate without having the power.
Yeah,
So
There's a couple of questions.
yes, please.
So thank you. I apologize. By muscle memory, I left my briefcase at home and it ran out. So I needed my laptop. So the first question, and you may have covered it, but you can just say, yes, you've covered it. Do you feel that your charter is accurate? Did you guys cover that?
No.
No.
Okay, good. I mean, it seems
Yes.
pretty clear.
Yeah.
On that, building on Kate's comment, it's clear from that your purview is within the historic district, but the question was raised, what about historic structures not in the historic
yeah,
district?
that is in our purview.
Okay,
We
but
did
it's not
talk
clear
about
from
that.
the charter, so maybe that's an
It's,
action.
it's
we
clear
should
by
take.
the state law. Their charter is really under the state law.
Well, then we should reference the
Listen-
state law, because that's also not, I think, it talks about Article 9 of the Carlisle General Bylaw. So anyway, that's a nit we can take up, but I think So that's clarity. And approximately how many houses are in the district?
They just did a new report.
Did you see our little booklet?
Yeah.
Did see it, yeah, but I don't remember
yeah.
the number.
So give or take 50.
And are you in touch with all the owners of those?
Well, that's our intention, is to keep in touch because
Right.
there is turnover and we want to make sure we hit
Right.
the new owners when we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, so, but my main question, I think we've all touched on it, is about process. I'm a big process guy. Ryan's a big process guy. So what's the sequence? I heard, you know, that like, if somebody wants to do something that they're in the district and they don't know anything, are you guys supposed to be first or are you later? Like, when do you wake up?
Well, it
Like,
could be zoning.
Zoning,
right, it could be zoning, could be
Board of
building,
Health, that could be planning.
right, so they have it and then they're supposed to know that
Kind of the
it's,
last in a way, because
But they often come to us first.
but that's, I mean, but that goes to your point, and that about being like last minute, like, oh, we've got all these approvals, like, you got to rubber stamp it, right? So, I mean, that's a real question. I don't, we shouldn't take it up here, but
well,
shouldn't you be like first, like, give me the ground rules about what I can do before I go to the inspector and the building commissioner and the board of, it would seem to me that this should be the other way, but that's just my
No, I
impression.
get it. I get your point, very well taken, but the reality is, the process is really only there to try to follow, but not, it's not a slam dunk. The Sylvia Siller's house, for instance, the one on the corner, do you know where I mean?
On the other side of the green.
Okay.
Oh,
On the corner,
Yep.
yeah,
And
well,
church.
it
Concord
was the
Church.
church.
It was a church.
no, it's the one down the hill.
The other
next
one
to
down.
Oh, at the bottom of the
down
hill.
bottom. Okay,
The
got
jack.
it.
Yes, yes,
on it.
yes.
Well, there was septic there that was controlling the architecture. There was planning because it was a non-conforming lot. There was, things that were much bigger hurdles in many respects than the historic stuff. But they came to us first,
Yeah.
to your point, because they felt that they couldn't do what they wanted to do architecturally, they wouldn't take it to those other boards. So it's a real chicken egg problem for all of us, to make sure they're not wasting their time with engineering or surveying, and so I'm not sure there's
Well, it would seem you guys are I mean, I think Ryan's onto it, right? If you incorporate them into the land use process, I think it will get streamlined, but what you're about to say, I think it's better to have the low, it may not be a low hurdle, but it's a lower cost hurdle. Like,
yes.
go to you
Don't
for the
come into
opinion
us.
before you have an engineering, like the
Right.
engineering study is expensive. So if I've already done my engineering study on this and you say, oh, well, it can't be
the
black, it has to
pressure
be
on.
pink. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I spent all this money, right?
I know, right? No, that's,
So, I mean,
that's right.
that would be my recommendation.
Well, it sounds like better understanding across the staff as well as with the various boards that might be involved.
I'm thrilled you've all asked us these questions.
Yeah.
Because we've never been asked these questions.
We're trying to do this very belatedly with, all the boards.
Yeah.
So you happen to be one of the early ones.
Well, I would have done my homework. You didn't. let
Well,
me
next
do-
time,
you
get me
can write-
prepared in that.
You can write us
Yes,
an
you
email.
can
We would
always-
love to get that
Exactly,
information.
provide us with more.
This is not the end of the
Yeah.
conversation. It's only the beginning.
Yeah.
It's great that Nathan is on the board because he's been through this so many
Yes.
times
And
before.
with, yeah, Experience.
I'm in my fourth decade on this board.
Are you really?
On and off, yeah.
Did they let teenagers in?
86.
Serve on boards?
Yeah. Ha, ha.
Um,
Well, thank you for your service. We do need to wrap
yeah,
up.
one
soon,
last quick,
so-
because I think we will look at maybe tweaking the charter. Historic homes outside the district, is that like a thing? Like it's like a designated historic home, or the district's clear, right? You have a district and you're in it or not in it. If we go and say, okay, also
And
historic,
is there a date by which?
yeah,
the
or something.
register-
It's only
registry.
by the registry of historic.
Well, that certainly is a trigger.
Maybe,
If
maybe
it's
think about that and let us know, because I think we should edit the charter. So thank you.
Okay. Oh, great. It's really, yeah, thank you
Right.
for
Thank
coming
you
in.
for-
It was
Thank
good
you.
to talk with
Welcome.
you.
Very information.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. We have next on the agenda is a discussion about the master plan and we've had some preliminary conversations on this on the select board, and, you know, over the last year, there've been conversations at the master plan steering committee level and with the planning board. So we are trying tonight to primarily focus on a sort of a process, a structure for moving forward to have initiatives taken around implementing some of the recommendations in the master plan. So we invited Madeline as the co-chair of the planning board, Madeline Blake, and also Jack Trost, who's the chair of the master plan steering committee, to join us for a discussion about that. And John Valentine's also here, and he was a member on the master plan steering committee as well. And of course, both Kate and I were on the master plan steering committee.
And live to tell the tale.
Yeah, so please, why don't you, come on up if you'd like, yeah. And I want to just sort of,
Barney, if I could just interject, we also have Sarah Cassidy Smith, one of our planning board members
Oh,
on Zoom, and
yes,
she's
thank you.
someone who was with us for the process of the master plan and also has planning experience in her real life.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Sarah. Hi, nice to see you again.
Hello.
So I had some discussion with Madeline and Jack over the last week or so, and some emails back and forth, and I apologize that it came out so late, and maybe not everyone has had a chance to look at it on the select board, but I tried to organize my thoughts about how I thought we might go forward. And so first, I'll just make a short, kind of presentation on that, a review of what I wrote. So one of the things that was actually in the master plan was the suggestion of having a implementation committee, a master plan implementation committee. And several of us have kicked that around. We've talked a little bit about it here at the board level. And my conclusion is that I don't think we want another committee. I think that for a number of reasons, another committee is going to further stretch our volunteer base and will require compliance with OML. I feel strongly that the implementation of the master plan should rest with the select board as well as the town administrator, with support from the planning board, but really should be the responsibility of the select board. And that also, I think we're much more likely to get participation from various boards and committees if the leadership is coming from the select board with support from the planning board to take seriously the master plan and see how they can participate in moving us forward. So for tonight, my goal would be for us to see if we can discuss how to approach this, what a process to use, and then see if we can come to some agreement as a group about how to do that. And there are lots of larger questions that we do need to discuss over time, about sort of the longer range financial plans and capital plans, a lot of things that are going to affect what we're doing over the next year or two. But for tonight, I think I'd like this to be our focus. And so I reviewed a bunch of things sort of as background, which I'm not going to go over unless somebody would really like me to, but just including what the select board goals. I will say this, the select board goals that we spent quite a bit of time working on this year, I think following a sort of a more rigorous process than we have in the past. We really, a lot thanks to Travis as the new member, sort of encouraging us to look at the master plan as the framework for looking at our goals. That's what we did. So our goals are looking at those 5 areas that were identified by the master plan. And then we actually took those, and David put together the recommendations that seemed to be relevant to the select board as specific initiatives that we could be responsible for moving forward on. And so that is reflected in our current Excel spreadsheet of what we as a select board are working on between now and the end of next June. And I made a list of some of the things we've already done, but I don't think we need to review that unless somebody has questions. So in a nutshell, and again, this is not, I hope we'll discuss it and review it and see if we want to make any changes. So it's not set in stone, but so my thought is that we have the town administrator lead a small working group that might include, for instance, a select board member, a planning board member, master plan steering committee member, and then possibly a staff person, depending on whether you want the any of the new folks that may be coming on board to play a key role on this, but that basically that small group sits down with the list of recommendations, which are there are 86 of them, and of those 20 are listed in the master plan as priorities, and sits down with those recommendations, which also show at least the master plan committee's thinking about which boards and committees might be responsible. And then also sort of a time frame. We had, current and sort of midway and then long term. So take a look at that information and sort it and figure out which board or committee might be the lead, because if you have 4 or 5 different boards being the lead, it's gonna then it'll be hard to move that forward. And if it really makes sense for 2 committees to be co-leads, great, but the charge would be, the goal of this working group would be to come back with a spreadsheet that breaks out those recommendations and puts them under various boards and committees. And with Brian's work, staff people that might or might not provide support. And that then would go out to all the boards and committees. And I set a goal of by November 1st. That may or may not be realistic, but then ask all those boards, committees, and staff to review it and provide feedback. And the things we want feedback on are, what are you currently working on that's included in the master plan? Which of these recommendations do you expect to work on between now and the end of June? What resources do you need to take action on these recommendations? Which of them do you see yourself working on in fiscal year 24? Are there some recommendations that you do not want to work on and why? So give us some feedback, and then any other comments, and then get that back to that same working group. I said by December 20th, basically with a goal of having it back before the holidays begin. And then that working group is going to compile the responses, make adjustments as needed, and then bring it to the select board and the planning. I would like to see the planning board involved at that level, but that's something we can talk about. Yeah. And then once it gets reviewed, then it goes back out to all the staff and the boards. And here it is, right? You've taken, you've agreed, we got your input, you've agreed, so this committee is going to be working on these 2 recommendations or however it plays out. And then I think it would be then the select board with, I think, Ryan, what my thinking on this is that you as the town administrator or some other staff person that you want to give that responsibility to is going to be the point person for getting feedback from various committees and boards, maybe through the staff that are supporting those particular boards, or if they don't have staff support, reaching out directly to the chairs, and so that we have some line of accountability and also communication going back and forth. And that then with some suggestion from other folks, I suggest here perhaps a quarterly report back to the select board on progress from the various boards and committees and staff people. So at the same time, then just in terms of a management tool, the town administrator or the person that you assign to this would maintain that spreadsheet and, put in the updates and changes and sort of have a living document, that's going forward that people can access to see where everybody is. And then because we've got town meeting coming up in May and there may or may not be town warrants that a committee or board or staff person is thinking should be on that town meeting, then in January, the select board would make a particular point of reaching out to the boards and committees about that May town meeting, and soliciting possible warrant articles. And then in June, at the end of the fiscal year, we do the select board would initiate an evaluation of progress. We, reset priorities if it made sense to do so, sort of do the process again of going back out to boards and committees and asking them about fiscal year 24 and thinking also about long-term. Maybe at that point, we ask the question of where do you see your board or committee, over the next 5 years? How do you see your board or committee pursuing some of the master plan recommendations? And I know that in the midst of all of this, over this next year or between now and the end of the fiscal year, that Ryan is already thinking, you're already thinking about, getting a better understanding of the capital plans that are out there and working with the finance director and the finance committee about getting that sort of longer term financial plan started. And so, hopefully those things will all be kind of informing one another as we go into future years about implementing the master plan. So that's kind of the overview, and I would welcome comments, ideas, other ways to think about this. Just giving us some
Can-
food for thought.
I'd like to just reframe it a little because there's a lot of mechanics in what you said. Then you said it verbally. Some of us have the benefit of seeing it in writing, but you guys don't. So let's step back from that for a second and on some simple things. So one is that we, the select board, recognized the tremendous work that was done and the great document that was provided and comprehensive, detailed, lots of things. Yeah, but pretty thoughtful. So we definitely wanted to leverage that. Like that was the first thing. So we spent a lot of time on goals, and I'll give you a copy and I'll certainly send you electronically the spreadsheet. It's in the packet, but the way we sort of lined up your goals and distilled our goals out of your goals. And because we're the select board, we get to tell other boards and committees kind of what their goals are and also his goals. So I think we're trying to make a good attempt to take advantages on all the pieces you had and at least pick some that we're going to work on. And so that's kind of sort of step one. Step two is we're just 5 people. We're 5 or 10 people, and anyway, we're thin volunteers, as Barney said, but we do have a lot of boards, commissions, town functions, people who touch those things. So we thought, we shouldn't be doing all the lifting. We should be leveraging everybody else that would have a vested interest. And a lot of it did line up pretty well with existing functions. So now we get to how to do that, which is where Barney comes in with the process. Again, we thought, don't remake the master planning steering committee because there is already a master planning steering committee. Maybe you're not ready to do a lot kind of more work right now, but you're there, you understand it. We are kind of also a steering committee. We do a few things we've said we will take on. It's important enough that we will personally manage, but there's lots of other ones where we think it's more appropriate, to coordinate among other functions, which again, we have liaisons, we've got the town administrator. So I think just at a high level, that's kind of the strategy that Barney's articulating. How we actually do it, how we grind through and spreadsheets and check-ins, that's what we need to work out, but that's the concept. So I guess, I don't know if that made it clearer or less clear, but that's the guiding principle that drove this discussion.
Can I make a comment as I was listening to this and not
Yeah,
to
John, pull that mic over.
John Ballantyne, not to repeat myself that I've said in various emails, but I'm putting on my consulting hat and sort of what I hear, sort of saying, you're taking a idea of the master plan that's been spelled out in 450 pages, but it seems like there all should probably be a kickoff meeting saying, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what the master plan said. Here's what the select board have said, how we're going to do this process. And anybody who's been a consultant knows that it never works out exactly as you want, no matter how many spreadsheets you have. But say, okay, have an all board meeting, maybe over in the school, and saying, here's what we're doing, here's the master plan, here's how we're doing, here's how we're setting the priorities and what's going forward, and we're going to meet it with you. And so that there's a real process of communication, because as you know, my big concern has been that we got the master plan at the, end of April, May, and then it was summer and COVID was still going on. And so a lot of people in the community, other than some of the boards, have read the 450 pages, but most have not. And you're basically said, okay, we're taking this. This is a terrific idea. We've thought through how we do it. Now, how do we kick this off? And I think, Barney, what you've laid out is very clear under the mechanics of the process. But now let's let everybody know. And the mosquitoes only going to be able to report, whatever they report. But this is a terrific time to say, here's how we're going to do it. And here's what's going to be happening over the next year. And yes, there may be some stumbles, but that's part of the normal strategic planning process and implementation. And we're going to all work hard to make this happen. But that, to me, as I hear this, that would be, as you know, I've wanted to have a flyer go out to the town, but in some way just say, boom, here's what we've done. Now we can go public. And
But
say,
to clarify, Jack Trost, to clarify what you're saying, John, I think is in this sort of timeline that you charted out, Barney, might be, you populate the spreadsheet, you get down to the, who's focused on what, you get this feedback, because I envision some people are going to come back and say, who, me?
yeah, right.
I didn't know you were thinking
exactly.
about me in that role.
Right.
But then you take that information and then in that time frame up till December, if everything went well, you could then have some understanding.
Before the holidays hit us and before the town warrant short agenda, before Thanksgiving.
Well, but I don't know if it's realistic to go, I
know
would
it's not
say,
realistic, but
Yeah.
Maybe in January.
yeah, my thought is if you
Driving.
went through this process and you got this feedback and interaction, then you would say, this is how it's going forward. I think it would be unrealistic to tell people how it's going forward if you haven't gone to these individual groups, you haven't assigned.
they don't even know what most boards may have read the master plan and now you're coming out to do something, but how do we communicate with them? I mean, I would do it through a memo, but saying, here's what we're doing.
But that's sort of what Barney's saying is that you would send out that Ryan would convene this conversation, you would populate these recommendations, you would highlight the ones that are clearly essential, and then you would go back to these
okay.
groups. And the groups would have to assume ownership of them.
Yeah, but
I think that's the way I would interpret it. And I don't know if it makes any sense to try to convene all the boards and committees before they've been asked to.
Well, you could do it, you could say, here's the broad thing and here's what we're planning to do, and we're gonna have all these individual meetings, but some kind of common kickoff so people understand it, maybe not the detailed.
We should, you're absolutely right, John, that we need to socialize it and,
Mhm.
and get a common understanding, at least from select board standpoint.
Right.
But I would also just mention, I didn't mention earlier, I mean, you sat in a little bit of the historic commission meeting where Barney asked about the master plan. It's our intention, as we mentioned, to try to touch every board and committee. And basically, we ask like 3 questions. Like, is your charter right? Do you understand your mission? Is it your mission? Maybe it's 4 things. What are your goals? How do they relate to the master plan? And how can we help? Right? That's kind of what we're asking everybody. That takes a while, right? That's going to take all year. Maybe it'll take 2 years, but also your master plan is a 10-year, 5-year document. So I think, to me, getting it right and making positive, if small steps forward, is more important than, before Thanksgiving. Or I just think we got it. It took 2 years to get it done.
Longer than that.
Well, 3 to 5.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 2-year process
But
that
if
you're
you
describing right now.
I'm describing a 2-year process
Absolutely.
through which
Right.
we will touch. I think what we're saying, at least I'm saying, I hope, I don't want to speak for the board, but what I'm saying is we are committed as a select board, at least this select board, to leveraging the work you've done. We take it seriously and we want to get it in the DNA of every board and committee to be thinking that way. And it's a touch point to always refer back. Now, how we get there, kickoffs, socializing, retailing, all those things, we have to do all those things and it will take some time. But we'll start, I mean, again, I don't want to, not pride of authorship, but we picked out some high level things that we said, we're going to take that on right now. And so those will be our priority. And then there's, the 82 other things we didn't pick
Right.
that we'll, get to.
Mhm.
Madeline, do you have any comments at this point?
The planning board would like to be helpful however we can. I mean, we support you guys taking responsibility for this, and we'd be happy to attend meetings like this and discuss it. Disclosure, was able to have input to Barney ahead of time, so some of what she said wasn't a surprise to me. And I think it's been one of my things that I think is important is that we assign, because the responsible parties now, sometimes there's a lot, and I think there are groups out there that are going to have that what us,
Yeah,
because they're in a group with a lot of people, and I was maybe a step ahead of some of them because I was on the master plan committee. So I have very clearly in my head, I think there's like 6 that the planning board's the lead on. And I think every
6
Recommendations.
yeah,
Yeah.
like getting a planner is the first one, working on GIS.
Tick that box. We like-
Yeah, no, I know. I was glad of the support there, David. But I think every group needs to kind of have that clearly in mind. And so then they can think about which would I do first, or is this a 5-year thing? And I think the frequency of reporting, I'm kind of on the side that we shouldn't bug them too much. We should let them do their work. But I think that'll kind of sort itself out. Like if it's too frequent, you'll realize that it's.
Yeah.
And I would just add something to what Madeline said, having been involved in this process over that course of 2 years, is you will also find that there are groups that may not be selected as the primary contact for this that are going to be upset because they're going to want to be involved. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. It's just a question of, how do you manage that process?
Is this
Right.
a Tom Sawyer play? You can't paint that fence.
Yeah, right.
So no, but you can imagine,
Yes.
and so what I think is going to be really good, and this goes back, David, when we presented the plan, is we're sort of pulling everybody out of these silos. And this is, one way to do it, right? Is
Right.
to say, you take the lead on this, and these other groups are going to have some important input as well. And I think it will sort itself out in a good way. So.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have any comments you want to share?
I don't. Madeline actually did circulate the document that you shared tonight, and actually I thought it made a lot of sense. I think sometimes lean, and when we're talking about implementation, can be really helpful. So I think sort of a small, really focused group to be able to sort of as you said, indicate which parties are responsible for certain tasks. It makes a lot of sense to me. So I think that's a good way to go.
Travis or Kate or Nathan? And Ryan, I'd also love for your input as well.
I guess I'm intrigued by John's idea of the kickoff. Because in certain respects, I think it could be a really high level thing, not, getting into the details, but really kind of, I like the idea of an enthusiastic, it's not an unveiling of the plan anymore, but again, the announcement that this plan was done, it was a lot of work. We don't intend to have it sit on the shelf. This is what we've already started doing. We'd like everybody to, reread it if they haven't, or if they've read it already, or read it if they haven't read it at all, see what part, really speaks to them. And that we, and to announce some of this process so that we don't have to wait for the 2.5 years to actually have gotten them into here, that they already know that when they do get here, this is what we're, well, because we
Yeah.
had already, people who came tonight and said,
Right.
gee, we wish we'd known you were going to ask us this, we would have done our homework. So I think it's an excellent idea, basically, and we've talked, and I would love, maybe because we've talked about, one of the goals was to, recruit new
Volunteers.
volunteers. I would like to make it in the format of, like a college fair where come and visit all the committees. So you have all the committees there. They can give their spiel about the thing, and then we give our spiel about the master plan. I think it would be a great event, and hopefully a lot of people would come to it.
How many
Do you think there's a
boards? I mean,
benefit?
it's like, sorry.
Right, Sarah?
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I do think there's a benefit, as Jack mentioned, to sort of getting some initial input from the boards before we sort of announce that this is what each committee or board is going to take on, only because they might have a better sense of their capacity and what they think they can tackle in 1 year. So Jack's suggestion that we get that input first and then have a bit of a kickoff does make sense to me.
Well, I wasn't thinking that the kickoff would be doing any assignments. The kickoff is only kicking off
Right, exactly.
the idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in, just to pick up on what Sarah said, I'm in favor of the idea of a kickoff, but I'd like to see some of this groundwork laid, the communications initiated with these groups. You're going to have much more productivity
Yeah, sure,
from
absolutely.
their point of view if they've gotten it and they have those questions, Barney, whether those questions that you read are tweaked a little bit,
Right.
and then get people in a room, it could be much more effective. So,
But well, I think that's right, but I don't think we have to retail to each, like, if we send it out, like, to think about it, but I agree with Kate. I mean, there's something about, I recall back the last event pre-COVID, it was actually at the edge of COVID, as it turned out, in the cafeteria,
yeah.
right? Remember that, right?
Exactly, right.
And
like 2
that was like
weeks.
the public launching of some phase,
Yeah,
and
right.
okay. So, all right, so hey, look, COVID's kind of over. We're having another big event, and this is phase 2, right?
Right.
And make a big deal. And it, the thing about vision, and I've known this, this is common in leadership. You don't have to know all the details to paint the vision. In fact, it can be detrimental because you get sort of tangled up. Like, here's the vision, right? We've done this. Now we want to leverage the power of the whole community, like not just sports, like everybody, right?
Right, exactly.
And we want you as leaders of these, to lead,
Right.
right? So figure it out. Like, that's kind of
Yeah.
the message, and then you let the brain power kind of work at it. And then but I think back to to pull back from that lofty image, then there's always the hard work of coordination. At the end of all that, you have to harness that energy. And that's where, at least I see, select board, planning board, and master planning committee being at the core of that. Because at the end of the day, somebody's got to, make sure things are kind of going, and of course, TA, pointed in the right direction, not at cross purposes, helping coordinate where you might want to talk to so-and-so because he has something to add, or they have something to add,
Sure.
Travis?
Well, Barney, I appreciated the comment at the beginning that I helped steer the, goals, because the select board, adopted goals that were, in keeping with the master plan. I think this is a wonderful document. It's so helpful to understand where the town wants to head and what we have a vision for. And so I think about leadership too, David, and I think, it starts with this board, and that's why it's important. And so you put it down on paper, and it's great. And we're starting to, see the implementation. And from that, and David already said it, but we have, hired a new town administrator, and your goals are essentially the master plan that we have put forward. We have set the goals for the year and saying, we've pulled these from the master plan. We, the select board, have deemed these are the most high priority of the things we want to implement. We then have, set those as our goals, and the town administrator is reviewed based on those goals. And so in some ways, he's integrated into this already. And so I think that's a incredible first step that we haven't had before. Now we're launching into that. Then the select board took another decision to say, well, as part of integrating these other boards and having better cross communication, we're going to bring these boards before us. And David already mentioned this. And one of the things, I think if I already kind of review how it went tonight, I think it could go a lot better in the future by going to these boards, because the select board's going to bring these boards and committees before us, and we're going to have those questions, those 3 questions essentially, or 4, and that's it. But we could do a better job of prepping people ahead of time, prepping our board as well, of giving, all of the charter and the master plan sections as they relate to them, so that we have specific things. Again, this is leadership from our board and from the top. And the more I kind of listen to this, I think this is all great. I'm coming a little bit from the outside because I was involved a bit in the master plan, but certainly not as much as everyone in this room who've, put all their energy into it. And I do worry a little bit that it becomes so cumbersome. And I'm thankful for you saying you're not interested in another committee for this. And I think that that's good. I think we have to I think we're in good shape, frankly. And so my long-winded way of saying is, I think we're on the right track, even without, creating a lot more work for a lot more committees to do this, because as we bring them before the select board and say, this is important to us, and these are the goals for the year, I think we're going to get a lot more of this feedback in this, implementation than necessarily setting up a whole new subsystem to implement it. But that's just kind of how I'm viewing it. I think we're on the right track, and I don't think it requires as much detail, but I'm probably alone in that. And because I know you've laid out a lot of, detailed plans on that, and I'm certainly open to it, and I'm going to help along the way. But anyway, thank you.
Well, and I can say too, Travis, excuse me, that on picking up on that point, when the master plan committee met June 30th, John, if I'm not mistaken, we tossed this around about, the notion of an implementation committee was just to make sure that once the plan was released, it wasn't just going to gather dust on a shelf. And so by David's actions and your, work with Ryan and so on, you've already started the implementation, and that's a good thing. And the committee, when we talked about it, we were very open-minded to the idea of how you do it. And in particular, since we, for 2 years, and as Madeline knows, went through this all through the open meeting process, there are advantages and disadvantages to, the level of detail that you go through in terms of formalizing committees and so forth. So very open-minded, I think, was the conclusion by the master plan steering committee to an implementation process that would just move the plan forward. So.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Kate, and then John. Yeah.
I
And
just
then we
wanted
wanna
to
hear from
address the
Ryan.
OML portion. And because I've been thinking about it, and I don't want people to think we're trying to skirt OML because we are not. I think OML is important when you're making decisions, when you're prioritizing things, when you're making decisions. Implementation is actually rolling up your sleeves once the decision has been made and doing it. And the implementation mostly will be done, well, by some committees, but mostly by staff. And that's why staff are actually not controlled by OML, because they're usually not the ones making the decisions. And I think this whole idea of the implementation being a working group it's okay to not use OML, because that group is not making the decisions. That group is parsing out the work and getting it done. So I just wanted to kind of,
Yeah.
So 2 comments. One, I think we've all been on committees long enough, so we know how much work it is to do things. And so I don't think we want to underestimate the amount of time and effort that's involved. And I know how much Jack spent on the master plan. And so one of the concerns I have, and we have a new town administrator come on, very eager and excited, We can't put everything on his shoulders to do everything and say no, but to say because there's a whole process of getting people involved, and some committees are gonna say, yes, we've got that person can work on it, and others are gonna be fully loaded with their own agenda. So I think we have to be very cognizant, because we're not working for a company, we're not hiring anybody. We're basically asking for volunteer time. So I think that that's a really important process to recognize. And the other, which you're very aware of, and as you know, on the sort of capital plan and financial plan and the public safety needs, as you know, sometimes short-term needs and demands can drive what's our longer term decisions. And so the consequences of the 2 school building projects that we had meant that we under-maintained the rest of the town for 10 years and kept a tax rate that was very low. And now we're paying the consequences of it. It's not that we didn't know about it, but it's again, the short and long term are together. And so that we have to be make sure that we're, as you know, I kind of think out long 10, 15 years. Where are we going to be at a town in 15 years? What are those needs? And then how does that feed into what we're doing shorter term? And that's not simple and easy. And again, I know, Ryan said he's ready to do it. He's very eager, and we do it with the finance director and the finance committee, but this is hard work. And unfortunately, budget dollars often do drive, and taxes do drive people's decisions. So again, how do we do that in concert? Because all these things are as part of the process.
Well, the money is, I mean, everything costs money, right? So at the end of the day, whether it's a working group that Ryan runs, or it's a board, or it's 2 people having a coffee at Fern's chatting about it, to get serious, somebody has to come to somebody for money, and it ends up here. So in terms of OML, there's that gate at the end of the day, right?
Well, but then it comes to here, which is open.
It's open, right? So when you need money, it becomes open,
Right,
if it hasn't been already. So whether you deliberated about should the microphones be yellow or blue is almost immaterial until you have to come and ask for paint. Right.
Well, and then the other thing too is that each of the boards and committees that have decided to take on pieces of the master plan, that a lot of that work going to be done in their meetings, which are open. So it's not as if there's, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So I would, Ryan, love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. So thank you. I hear what you're saying, John. Like, you don't want to put too much on me, but I think the same is true of the boards and committees. And the staff this is our job. Like, this is our work. And a lot of this is just, it's not that hard, right? Like, it is like hire a town planner is one of the recommendations. Done. Like, we'll work on that and we'll get it done. And it's not that, it doesn't have to be deliberated. There's a percentage of these that the staff should just do. And what we need is support to get them done, whether it's financial support or support from the boards and committees. But there are things that we cannot decide and should not decide, which is what the boards and committees, I think, should be spending the majority of their time on. So, and I'm not like, I've been here a month. I'm not trying to open any can of worms or anything, but what buildings do you want to build, and what tax rates do you want, and what do you want us to focus on are the things that we need the boards and committees to do. We really don't need you so deep in the weeds that you're not making these bigger decisions that will help us move along. Just something to consider, in my own opinion, in the process. And second is the idea of empowering. So I applaud the select board for tying their goals to the master plan. That makes the master plan a living document and something that everybody should be using. I ask the staff to do the same. Match your goals that you're giving to me to the master plan, the select board goals, plus your own goals, plus your own personal goals, right? Very simply telling the staff, I want you to focus on these things as well. I encourage the boards and committees to do that with their staff members and say, we want you working on these items because they're tied to the master plan. If everybody did that at the end of this year or next year, 1 to 2 years, I want to give a number, but a certain percentage of the master plan will be done. And then it's the hard stuff. And it's the stuff that you might not want to do anymore after you take the low hanging fruit out of the way. That could make this a cumbersome, difficult document that is doable in 5 to 10 years. Otherwise, not each one of these, it's hard, but there's some really hard ones that are going to take 10 years, and we need to identify those and start working on them now. Otherwise, they'll never get done.
So are you comfortable with the idea of a working group that you would, or have some other staff person lead for the short term process of, taking the master plan document and doing the work of figuring out which committees and boards for which recommendations. And then that going out for input review by all the boards
Oh,
and
yeah,
committees.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, talking to staff and others, it's gonna be a group effort and it'll be part of our regular department meetings and other initiatives that show that's important, and then we'll give it back. What I'm trying to say is we need support when we give it back and say,
Yeah.
we need a decision.
Yeah.
This will only go as fast as those decisions are made or articulated or presented, and then of course resources, but we'll ask for those when necessary.
Nathan, did you have any thoughts you want to add at this point?
I don't have anything new.
Okay. Well, I think that what I've heard is we want to break down the master plan, have this working group do that work. We can maybe have people individually that are interested in doing that, you know, the sort of appropriate people. You could just speak directly to Ryan about that. And then the rough time frame seems to be okay. We'll see how we do, but trying to get something out to the boards and committees and get something back before the end of the year. And then we should continue to think about, so is there some kind of more public launch event at that point, right? After the boards and committees have had a chance to chew on it and give feedback. And along with that, I think is also the idea of some way to provide a simpler, not simpler, but a more easier than reading, 450 pages, but a little more depth than the summary, but some piece of information that we can be then sending out actually much more broadly. And then we'll see where we are in January. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Can I just mention one elephant in the room, which is that you've met with Christine Lear, you know about the public safety
Yeah.
committee needs of, 20 to 30,000 square feet, which will obviously go through refined. And that may be $20 million of capital expenditures. Clearly, that's a big issue we're going to have to wrestle with, which affects all the master plan and everything else. And as you know, I think we have a debt capacity at the current tax rate in about the 20 million, 25 range. And so that seems to be a guideline that we have to get our arms around sooner rather than later, because it affects everything else that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that meeting, they're having a meeting next week to kind of review the details and know what's going through so that's a big issue that you guys have to wrestle with the rest of the board, and it affects
Right.
everything else.
Right. And we did, in our meeting with them at the select board, we were very clear about, and they were clear to say that the study of the fire department and the sort of everything they would want is not feasible. It's not realistic for our town. We couldn't afford it. But
But the
good
study's
point.
coming. I mean, we're gonna,
yeah,
so to answer your question, I mean, we have a check-in with them in November, late
once
November,
the study is back
when
from,
the study's back, because first we
Yeah.
have the study. And back to the point that Ryan was making about money, I mean, the money is driven in basically town meeting cycles, right? So whatever we do collectively in this process, I think and it was alluded to in Barney's list here, we should be coalescing around the budget request for fiscal 24 or whatever the year is we're going to be doing. And then that will drive that activity, and then we'll do it again. So, and I would just say, John, that there's a lot of low hanging fruit that's not in the $20 million range. Right. So I don't think we should be bound by inact. That needs to go stepwise carefully.
Yeah,
right?
no.
Because that's the one shot, like you say, that's your capital spend for the next foreseeable future.
Right.
So make sure you're sure about it,
exactly.
right? But there's an awful lot of little things that can be done that will all augment the goal, right? The Carlisle character and the connectivity and many, many things. So, we should, I always say, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. I like what you're saying. Let's dive in. And I would suggest we think about, because we are doing scheduling, a check-in with you. We should get this out. And then we should have a check-in sometime before Christmas, I think, with you guys. On how's it going? What have we learned? What do we want to do next?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest. So if
Agreed.
you're open to that, we'll schedule that in.
And I would say it'd be very helpful, David, as you offered to get a copy of what
The
you
select
have
board goals.
developed.
I will certainly email you. I have a couple extra copies as it stands here, so, but these are just, so that document's in the packet. I mean, it's public document, but
Also on the website. The boards.
Okay.
you can read it and you
Yeah.
can see the thought process, and yeah, just ask us questions about it.
Great.
Well, great. Well,
Okay.
yeah, Kate,
One
did you have one
procedural
more
part.
thing on
Yeah,
this?
well,
Okay,
Well, because I want to know if we need a motion, for instance, or if we want one even tonight, to direct Ryan to set up a working group, because, you know, to just kind of formalize this and
Sure.
say, you know, as per the notes that were presented, to begin the process.
Sure. You're the
excellent
motion lady.
idea.
Yep, so moved.
May I have a second?
Wait, no, wait, there's a.
Just, I would like to settle just advise that we settle the town planner situation before. I would
Oh, before you
strongly
launch
recommend
into
that
it,
that
right.
person is in the working group.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
That's
well,
official.
it's your working group. You're going to,
Gotta set Expectations of time.
oh,
Yeah,
okay, no,
yeah.
but the thing is, what I want you to have is the authority, whenever you're ready to launch, you go. You don't
Put
have to
together
come
the
back and
working
ask
group.
us again.
Right, right.
We don't, you know.
As long as next meeting, you're not like, where's the working group?
No,
No, that was yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
He knows Kate Mead already.
And John Valentine, you missed that part, but yeah. All right,
Okay,
so,
all right. So I move we authorize our town administrator to establish a working group to implement the master plan.
may I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All right, well, let's do a roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Modell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Excellent. Good. Passes unanimously. Thank you all
Thank you,
very
guys.
much.
You.
Really appreciate what we're all
Yeah.
getting into here for this next phase. All right.
Are we still standing committee? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you are.
We have,
All right.
We'll have
we
to-
haven't let you off the hook yet.
Yeah.
For those of our committee that haven't been watching.
Right. You didn't know it, committee, but no. All right. Thanks so much. Yeah. All righty. So, we'll, I'm gonna turn it over to Ryan to give us a quick update on the assistant town administrator.
Oh, wait, sorry.
So as we were planning for this meeting, we wanted to make sure there was a placeholder here in case the Assistant Town Administrator Screening Committee was ready to make a recommendation, and the committee did want to give one recommendation to the board, and from conversations I heard, wanted one recommendation. So we had 18 candidates. We interviewed or attempted to interview 5, ended up interviewing 4 candidates, all very strong. All 18 were strong. The final 4 were definitely strong. And the committee has narrowed it down to 2, and we would like, speaking on behalf of the committee, more information. So we're going for a second round of interviews on Friday. We have being pretty rigorous, asked the applicants to submit a writing sample, to consider answers to 4 questions, and also provide references that we're going to look at first to inform the committee one more time before we bring a final selection. Honestly, these 2, either one would be excellent. So we're in a very good position of having a wealth of candidates and are looking forward to completing this process. So looking for the board to support potential appointment at their next meeting. I think that's pretty reasonable timeframe.
Excellent. So that'd be the October 11th meeting, the first one in October. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, we really would have liked to have brought you somebody tonight, but we didn't want to be buffaloed into, we figured a couple extra weeks was.
No, do it
Yeah,
right.
You want to get it, yeah, you want to get it right. Yeah. Okay, good. Any follow-up questions from anybody?
Appreciate you catching us up on the schedule.
Okay, let's move on then. Perfect timing. It's 8:45. And I see that we have some members from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council on Zoom. So welcome, and perhaps maybe I should
I'll
turn it over to
introduce
you, Ryan, and you can introduce them. That'd be great. And then
Absolutely.
we'll hear from them about ways we might approach a regionalization study.
So this was a board request to understand what a regionalization study would look like. This was started by Steve Ledoux. And so I reached out to MAPC, and on the Zoom here, we have Brian Luther, who's a municipal services specialist for them, and Mark Fine, who is the director of municipal collaboration. So I've asked them to come and give a brief overview, not necessarily a proposal, but an overview of what that study might look like for you, and then give you a chance to ask questions. And if the board wants to move forward or talk about timeline at a later date, that would be great, just to inform that discussion.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're thrilled to be here, and thanks for having us. Yeah, so thank you, Ryan. Today I'm joined with by Mark Fine as my supervisor. And today we just always chat a little bit about, you know, your interest in a regionalization study, you know, provide you a brief overview of MAPC and describe our technical assistance program a little bit, and talk about our department's recent experience in this type of studies, and then hear from you about what you think your biggest challenges facing your, you know, public safety services, and learn about your vision for the study. And that way we can take that back and provide you some more context about what we would like, the key components of the project that we would see it.
Excuse me, Brian, I think it's a little difficult to hear you, so I don't know
Oh,
if
okay.
you can maybe even slow down a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So
For
sorry
those
about that.
whose ears take a little while to process things, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. How about this? Is this okay?
A little better, yeah.
Yeah. A little
Sure.
better.
Yeah, so just a brief overview. MAPC is the regional planning agency for the 101.
Hold on one second. It looks like we're gonna get something up on the screen, right? To look, no. Oh, getting the sound adjusted. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, these
Yes,
hybrid
sorry.
meetings, you never know. But yeah, so MAPC, or just tell me when you think when we're good to go. Good. Okay, yeah. So MAPC, we're the regional planning agency for the 101 communities in the greater Boston area. You know, our region extends as far south as Duxbury to Ipswich up north, and then Bolton and Bellingham in the west. And our agency provides a variety of services that span from transportation, land use, government affairs, clean energy, community engagement, arts and culture. And Mark and I are in our municipal collaboration department, which specializes in municipal services, procurement, grant management, and emergency preparedness. We have a lot of experience working with municipalities on these types of studies that really dive into you know, governance, structure, operation, finances. And we've worked with single municipalities in the past to evaluate departments, and we include full reviews of services and how you you know, compare to peer communities if that's what you're interested. And how to create programs and expand services, especially in areas like public health and safety. We have a considerable amount of experience working and setting up shared services. We have an extensive experience crafting the agreements, overcoming challenges that come with reaching consensus, and then the public process to approve these types of agreements. And we have a broad experience in a lot of public safety partners that we work with, you know, very, very closely. And you know, in the past month, Ryan and I have been going back and forth. We provided a sample of our work for the past few years, and I think I can go into them a little bit, but I think I'd rather get more to the point about the project that you're all planning, or like how you see this project, and I could go through our typical methodology for these types of projects, but we'd really like to hear in your own words. Just like what you see as like the primary challenges, what you're looking to get out of the study, and then we can go in a little bit about how our you know, our methodology kind of fits and this type of work, and go from there. Unless you want to hear more about our experiences in these types of projects, but I know it's 8:45, so I figure we can just provide those references and links to Ryan, and you can sign
Yeah.
up for it.
I just will say that you know, we as a board have not made a decision or have a proposal on the table that we're considering around sharing services with other towns. We do right now, as you probably know, right, have a police and fire public safety building committee looking into the needs of our police and fire. And so we would like to, I think it would, from my standpoint, it'd be helpful to know how you would go about, doing a study for something like that. And really, I guess, to help inform our own conversation about whether this is something we want to take on, that, or is it something that makes sense for our town? And I will, just the other thing I'll add is that while those two public safety services are really front and center right now, I mean, there are other services too that would be, like to have you consider at the same time, everything from, sharing maintenance, I don't know if departments of public works do any kind of shared services or equipment, you buy the equipment jointly because you don't use it, all the time, but whatever. So it's not just, in my mind, wouldn't just be limited to police and fire. I don't know if anyone else wants to make a quick comment, but since we did only give 20 minutes for this, we probably want to hear from them. But
I think the
anybody else
comment you
have-
just made, Barney, was the one that I would have made it.
Say it again.
I think the comment you just made is the one I would have made.
Okay.
I would just add that we just got done with our master plan discussion, and if you read our goals for the year, one of the goals we've started with fiscal sustainability, and one of our goals, I guess, or sub goals, is to establish a committee to investigate the benefits and trade-offs of service regionalization, interlocal agreements, and participation in MAPC's collective purchasing program opportunities. So, that's from our master plan. And I think we're trying to take that and say, okay, what's the best approach to doing that? And then implementing what Barney's saying is thinking about how we could share services and those things.
So
Yeah.
go for it.
Hi. Yeah, well, I mean, all the issues you just mentioned are things we've majored on in the last few years in working with our communities. I mean, it's within our department that we run the collective purchasing programs. We also, I mean, a lot of our experience working with municipalities is on shared services. I mean, I guess if we're talking about what, like a feasibility assessment or even guidance to you all on what to consider in thinking about regionalization, I mean, that's something we've definitely done for a number of communities. I mean, usually we want to understand sort of the baseline issues that you're dealing with. What are the drivers for change? What are the fiscal pressures you're working under? And also, what are some of the constraints that, are pushing you in this direction? And that's kind of like a baseline assessment we would probably conduct in working with, Carlisle officials. Then I think we'd look at, what are the options? And the options, regionalization would be one of them. There might be others. But, we would look at what are the feasibility and options for addressing, regionalization. And I think when you look at the various services, there's obviously pitfalls that are different depending on the service area, right? I mean, and complexities that would attend to different service areas. So, things like, public health or, maintenance, those might be, certain types of conversations when you get into public safety. I mean, we've had experience working with a number of communities looking at public safety consolidation, or at least, certain service areas, especially like dispatch. And, we've done those reviews. We've looked at the finances. We've thought about, how at the end of the day would a new service look like, and what would the cost of that be compared to, the cost that a community was bearing before that. And I mean, we'd make that analysis and provide some level of recommendations to you. I would say regionalization is always a political process too. So we'd have to weigh those factors. I mean, and there is, I would say with public safety in particular, it gets pretty political pretty fast. And, levels of buy-in and consensus between community leaders but also I'd say with, the public safety stakeholders and probably even the rank and file would be some part of the analysis we would do, because, we've seen when communities have endeavored to look at merging, or consolidating certain services in the public safety space, they've gotten fairly down the track and then have faced considerable pushback from, the unions, and also, that's translated into some opposition, like from, select boards and others. So sometimes it's worth kind of opening those conversations with some communities just to explore what they're willing to consider, and doing that, kind of concurrently with looking at the analysis around the numbers. So, I mean, that's the type of, review we could also help facilitate and conduct. We've done that many times, and, we're glad to do that here. But, Brian,
Yeah.
feel free to
And Mark, and like you mentioned that you would be interested in starting a committee to kind of delve into these things too. And this is something that Mark and I have a good amount of experience very recently too in the town of Sharon. We're conducting in tandem with their governance committee. We help staff and research a lot of the things that they're interested in. So what the committee will meet and have a topic that they're interested in, and then we provide a lot of research and data and analysis back to the committee to make more well-informed decisions. That's a role we're willing to play. But I think what Mark had also said too is looking at a feasibility study, and obviously there's a lot of components of that. We've got a good amount of experience taking those feasibility studies and kind of laying the pathway to implementation, and kind of understanding the challenges behind like some sort of regional approach to some of these services. But I would say that most recently we've stood up a regional IT service in the North Shore that's going really well, and taken some lessons from there. Obviously, IT is very back office and not as political as public safety, so there's obviously different nuances in the projects themselves. But I think we'd be really interested to hear from you. Obviously you've mentioned a couple of the key drivers to this study and this challenge, and the challenges that your public safety department face, but and then also others. But I think it's a project that, in a variety of ways we can provide a deliverable to you that you can either take and try to implement, but also even if it's more of a like a targeted research area where we provide case studies and context to some of the questions that you might have depending on the service. That's the topic of that time. I think we're well equipped to do that.
Ask a question. So a couple of questions. Thank you. One is, we have sort of a two-part thing, right? One is just guidance of where, not say start with, well, we want to, regionalize public safety. Like, given our town and our challenges, help guide us, prioritize which things to look at. So that's a different task. And then just more broadly, it would be helpful to understand, how are you funded? If you take on a project, how much does the community pay? How much do you get, say, from state? I don't know how that process works.
Maybe, I could start with, I can answer both, but I mean, just on your first question, yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly done kind of analyses of sort of what are the options to look at regionalization, and what are some of the pros and cons of kind of pursuing different service areas, and maybe based on, Carlisle's situation, and also some of what you find in your neighboring communities that might be interested in sharing, where would the most the best prospects be for looking further at that. And we could kind of do that analysis and present that back to the board, and then obviously, based on that, decide to pursue certain options further, at your direction. I mean, as far as funding goes, Brian did, I think, briefly mention our technical assistance program. So, sometimes we're funded by funds that communities might have designated for a program, but we also do make available our own technical assistance funding. So we invite, the communities within the MAPC region, of which Carlisle is one, to solicit, us to provide technical assistance. And basically it just requires kind of a letter kind of stating the purpose and interest in the community and and seeking our support. And, from there, it goes through a process of consideration, within our agency. But, I think this is an area, of interest for, Brian and I, and, our technical assistance program is, kind of cross-departmental, each department, receives support for certain projects. So if Carlisle is interested in pursuing that, we could help orchestrate the kind of letter and then, push internally for, the funding that would basically pay for our time to support you in this work. We would basically be dedicating time, to support Carlisle in this work and would use our own funding for that. Sometimes we do a hybrid. I mean, we have, the community compact or efficiency and regionalization grant programs. We've obviously worked with communities through those channels as well. So if this was, something that the community wanted to pursue through those channels, we could. And sometimes we've mixed and matched funding. So sometimes it's been a combination where, the community's had some resource, but to maybe do the project in the fullest, in the best manner, we've decided to kind of match some funding alongside the community's resource to make sure it's done, at the scale that's needed. So there are some options there, and we're willing to, we often can try to fit for purpose the kind of, funding to the project. So that's kind of where that stands.
Okay. Any comments or things, Ryan, you think we should be asking or looking at?
No, I just think it's helpful for you to hear what a study would look like, what some possible funding sources are. The bigger the scope, the more town resources we'll have to put in, and that also sets the timing for town meeting, et cetera, for asking for resources. So
And it is worth, oh, sorry, Ryan. It is worth saying you also might think about this in a somewhat phased approach with, it sounded like that, maybe part of the work could look kind of across departments and thinking about what are the best options to pursue regionalization. And then, that could be like a first phase of the work. And then depending on the outcomes from that, we could see, further funding down the road. So that's another way to think of it. It doesn't all have to be sort of applied for and sought all in one application.
So would we, in that line, I like your approach, would together develop a statement of work? Like talk to you and develop a statement of work and then figure out.
That's right. Yeah. And we would kind of translate that in part to a letter that would, come from the town to our, to MAPC. And then we'd kind of use that to open discussions within the agency about funding our time to support that work. So.
And typically sort of what kind of timeline might that look like?
I mean, it really depends maybe on scale and also the drivers for you all. It's good to know, if you're looking at certain milestones for when you want, to have, certainly if, some initial analysis done. I mean, obviously with towns, it's often built around town meeting schedules, if there's funding involved, or, I know this is kind of in connected to the master plan conversation, which, we heard part of earlier tonight. And, it might be tied to some of the milestones that, master plan implementation is tied to. I mean, we're interested maybe in, working back from where you'd like, the project to head, and we can kind of tell you what we think is doable within that timetable.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see if I heard sort of some of the options. You mentioned a baseline assessment, which sounds like would be sort of a preliminary preliminarily working with us around, helping us sort out what it is we want
We
to
even want to
find out
this.
about. Yeah, right. Do we even want to do this? And if we did, in what areas? And were we then to go on potentially a feasibility study of some sort, or possibly a more targeted, if we zeroed in on a particular service or set of services, something more targeted.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the approach that we kind of use too is more of like an existing conditions and like evaluation, which sounds really technical, but realistically, it's a lot of stakeholder interviews and chatting with, like administration, board members, staff, to kind of get to the heart of the issue and the scope of work from them, where we start adding like data assessments and research kind of stems from the initial challenges that we gather, collate, and then present back to you of where we think we would go. And so that's that way we don't overscope something that you don't necessarily, it isn't
Right.
necessarily relevant like at the end. That way it's more catered to what your needs are initially and what a whole range of stakeholders feel is where the town should move, and then providing research and analysis to kind of further those points.
Okay. That's helpful.
Yeah, I'm currently working with Alex Kopelman doing the HPP for town, and we have this.
She's very thorough.
Yes. Anyway, but the reason I don't know, thinking is that, I worry about us just going off and doing this by ourselves. That I would like to have some sort of participation from citizens / staff / yeah, I don't know what, along the entire way, because I don't want to do all this studying and then find out that we have no traction at all.
Right.
I mean, at one point we did think we were going to have a committee, and then we said, well, maybe we need this rather, but I'm not sure we don't still need some sort of call it a steering committee then, that.
But can't that be later? I mean, I worry about chicken and egg stuff, right? So if we do, if we wait and we form a committee and to me, if we could do like the phase one, like, let's just see what
Yeah,
the
it would be
canvas is,
actually there.
bring that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's actually their committee. I mean, for the housing, proposal, it's not a Carlisle committee. It's the MAPC actually invited stakeholders to come and help
And they
them.
would do that. That's.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if that was part of it, or if they thought they were going to go off and just do all this kind of
I
analysis.
heard them say they would talk to.
Yeah.
stakeholders.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I mean, obviously, when you're talking about, regionalization, I mean, community engagement at some phase is important. And you don't want to get ahead of your citizens on that. I mean, we're willing to sort of, in some ways, work with you to determine what's the best approach to that. We would not kind of mandate as part of sort of certainly an initial analysis that we present a whole bunch of ideas that the select board is not yet certain it wants to pursue. So we're not looking to put you in a position that you don't want to be in. So I mean, it might be that part of what we're doing is first something that serves the select board's interest in your considerations. And then obviously it could then, if it's something that you then want to, present for broader consideration of residents and other stakeholders, we could then work with you to, to kind of facilitate that. So we're glad to, we do a lot of community engagement as part of our projects. But I mean, here we recognize there's some sensitivities about what the proper timing for that would be. And are glad to work with you on how to, assess that.
Good.
So I'm looking for, so the board has said the word regionalization a few times. So understanding what it is you want studied, how you want it studied, and the phased approach maybe that David's talking about. I think scoping that out settles people down, because that word can rile people up. And it also sets a baseline. And I think the consultant is the better way to go. And it's also good to get no's, like, we're not going to regionalize this, or this doesn't make sense to do shared services, because then it really focuses any future committee on, okay, this is something that would make sense for our town and we should focus on it. If you go too broadly, the committee is going to just be working forever and not be very productive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think not necessarily counter to what you just said, Ryan, but I think it would be good to know, like, what have other towns been successful in regionalizing?
I agree with you. So
Yeah.
And
I
we-
like
we- oh, I was
David.
gonna say, we do understand the loaded word that is regionalization. We prefer shared services or collaboration. Those are more politically palatable.
Well, I like David's comment about prioritize. I mean, I think that's the first step is to figure out what our consultant would prioritize. And if they went through and evaluated, our town individually and said, these are the low hanging fruit, or this is what we're thinking. And they've named a few tonight, but if they came up with those so that they're the third party consultant advising us as to what would be our priorities to think about, because we may come here with our own ideas, but they're the experts in some way, unless others feel differently.
Agree with you, given where we are. Well, great. So I think from our standpoint, then we probably need to have another discussion about this, right?
Yeah, and there's another, you mentioned that there's another group you would like to also bring in, or?
Depending on the scope,
Yeah.
I want to do to see what this would look like, and then who we partner with
Right.
would matter.
One last question for you guys at MAPC. So Nathan brought up an important point, which is sort of benchmarking. I presume you have a fairly knowledgeable, list, if you will, of comparably sized towns and things they've done successfully, right?
Yes, very much. I mean, we've helped facilitate successful partnerships between communities. We've also seen, where they failed and
That's really important.
factors that have
Very
broken down in that type of arrangement.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Let's take one more meeting on this, but I think it sounds like we'd work with somebody on their side to create a SAL and see what it looks like, right?
That sounds good.
Well, we really, really appreciate your time tonight, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about
Yeah,
our
yeah.
department and what we do. And we're really excited, choose to go to the next phase of this. And
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful
Yeah.
and good to know that you're such a great resource to the region. So
appreciate that.
thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
They definitely are.
All right.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
They did our municipal vulnerability
That's
study as
right,
well, and
right.
they were absolutely.
They were very thorough. Yeah.
Very
No, I
good.
mean, Their website's impressive. They have a lot of stuff going on.
They're good. The only,
Okay, so are we okay moving ahead then? Because we want to go into the appointments and resignation.
Well, just to,
But,
I think we should just have a little bit of
okay.
deliberation, in terms of
Try to
process. right?
move that quickly then,
Yeah.
just so we're not getting into executive session when we're all
Right.
totally pooped.
Yep. I mean, it sounds like we should try to get that other group in, but they just couldn't do tonight, or you had another group in your
I
mind.
thought it would be good to see two different
All right,
examples.
so let's
Yeah.
do that. And then
Great.
I think we should decide, again, you're not obligating to say, let's work on a statement of work together. Let's see what it costs, and it doesn't
out of
obligate you to do
curiosity, what
anything.
is the other group?
The Collins Center out of
Yeah, well,
UMass.
Collins is
We like them too.
very well known and very good, yeah.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you. Thank you for the deliberation.
Okay, good. All righty. So let's move along then to the appointments, which you'll see on, well, if you're losing the
have-
packet, it's page 8.
We have a new handout.
Yeah, that's right. We do have a new, because we had a bunch of last minute additions.
Okay, so I'll just
Yeah, does
launch
this
in.
include all of them or just the new ones? All of them?
Right.
Okay,
So
great.
I move to appoint Julie Durrell at 251 Fifth Street to serve on the Land Stewardship Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2025.
You
Want
can
me to
do
do-
them all or?
I'll do them all.
Okay.
For the Cultural Council, I move to appoint Ann Quinnen to serve on the Cultural Council with a term expiring June 30th, 2025. And Preston Hallman at 6 Rocky Point to serve on the Cultural Council with a term expiring June 30th, 2025. For the environmental, I move to appoint Glenn Reed at 576 Rutland Street to serve on the Environmental Sustainability Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2023. And I move to appoint Dan Cook at 357 Cross Street to serve on the Environmental no, this is
That's
wrong.
not correct.
On
Just-
the Assabet Sudbury Concord Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Council with a term expiring June 30th, 2023.
I'm not sure the term's correct. I think, what Dan, I think it was a 3-year term. And is his letter, did we have
I'm
something
looking.
from
His
Dan?
letter doesn't say, does it?
Cause it's brand new and it's just the ESC that was only going through the end of June, so he should at least go into,
Give him a 3-year.
2024.
Give him a 3-year. He
there
seems
it is.
interested.
No, I don't,
Okay,
oh, it's the last one, yeah.
The letter
Okay.
doesn't say.
there's no reason not to give him a 3-year
Yeah,
term. So I move to appoint Dan Cook,
It's 3 years.
57 Cross Street, to serve on the Assabet, Sudbury, Concord, Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council with a term expiring June 30th, 2025.
may I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have discussion not related to their appointment, but several of these, I see several of these committees and so forth not having liaisons from us. Is that, again, and nothing to do with their appointment, but since we're on the subject.
Well, you know what, let's vote
Okay.
and have that done,
Okay,
and then we can address that. So let me have a roll call vote, please, on these, motions to appoint. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
what else?
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Okay, excellent. And so your concern then is about,
It's just a note.
there's
It's not
some-
a concern.
something
It
for
would-
us to note that we are some other committees that we don't have a liaison to now.
Is
the
Wild Rivers the same as River Stewardship? Is that
No,
the thing
that's-
he's on? Is that the same? We have a River Stewardship,
Oh, no,
Nathan
that's
is on
Nathan.
Nathan is on
No.
that one.
but that's not this.
No.
It's not
Okay.
this.
And this is not a town board or committee, you
Oh,
know,
I
the
know.
Assabet
Okay.
Valley thing, so we
Well,
don't. need to have-
MAPC Magic is not either.
Right,
I'm just pointing it out.
yeah.
And then Cultural Council,
Right,
unless I
we
missed
don't,
it.
I don't think we do have a liaison to them, do
Okay.
we?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah.
so I'm just noting it. Land
Yeah.
Stewardship we
It's
do.
a
so.
subcommittee. Land Stewardship is a subcommittee
Of
of Conscom.
Yeah, so.
Land Stewardship is
Travis,
covered
I'm on
because
that.
Travis
is
does that.
covering Yeah.
But,
okay.
so I'm noting that Cultural Council,
Yeah.
Trails Committee I wrote down, which is, and then Wild Rivers, I don't know, it probably doesn't need it. We don't need it. We just should,
Be
we should
aware.
aware and then decide if
Yeah.
we. would.
On the other hand, when we invite Conscom,
Amen.
we
Invite
need to
the others.
have them understand that their subcommittee, the BOG, the.
Yes, we have that when we cover the
Stewardship
little,
and Land
yeah,
Stewardship.
I don't know.
Part
Yeah.
of that.
We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes. Yep.
Okey doke. So, let's move on then to the town administrator's report.
All right, I'm cognizant of the time, so I will be as brief as I can be. Some interesting notes from my transition work. I walked the Cranberry Bog, which is pretty unique to Carlisle. You already know that, but I didn't. And I walked it with Sylvia. Just what an amazing space. We also went to the Greeno Dam and Greeno Barn, so I could understand that those capital efforts better. One thing I noticed while we're walking, Sylvia replaces the dog waste containers that are there. I don't think a lot of people realize, how dedicated our staff is. She goes there, people send her emails and she fixes that. She didn't want any recognition for it, but I think it's interesting that just how committed that she is to
Yeah,
our space.
yeah.
I also went to the Mosquito this week, went to visit that organization and was well welcomed. I saw how they edit it and how they work on it. So I have a better idea when they're asking me questions of where they're doing it from. So that's great. Financial understanding is one of my primary focuses, working with Kelly and Kim to understand the financial processes. This is in anticipation of us working on the financial modeling and also me working with the finance committee and select board on the upcoming budget. I introduced myself to the Municipal, not Master Facilities Committee, which I put wrongly in an email. So the Municipal Facilities Committee, the MFC, the Finance Committee, the Board of Assessors, and our insurance providers in various meetings in the last couple weeks. In terms of human resources, the Town Planner Screening Committee held its first interview. Part of this process has been Jen and others working to ready a space and make sure that this person can hit the ground running when they are hired. So that that is moving along nicely. And then I gave an update on the Assistant Town Screener Committee, which has moved along since this note, so I will continue. The Finance Committee team met to talk about the FY24 budget calendar to follow the Finance Committee and make sure that we are codifying all of our processes, which I think is important. And then we worked on our first policy recommendation for publishing consideration. So we have all these policies. We just need to codify them, approve them, make sure that everybody understands them, and then hopefully and potentially follow them. So that would go from us to the Finance Committee first and then to the Select Board for approval. And we should have a new financial policies book within the next year or so, I think is a reasonable goal. And then our town accountant received notice from the Department of Revenue that our free cash certification and balance sheets have been turned in. Kelly and Kim have been working hard and all the financial staff to move this process back, which would also move the audit back, which would inform the coming budget process, which is a more best practices approach. So Kim she's been working hard on this and identified it as a top priority. And I think that's good. That'll also help us set the tax rate sooner, which allows us to start the budget process in a timely manner. And all of it is very connected. So I have 4 action items. I'll go through them and then hopefully the board can vote to support them. So we are trying to consolidate office furniture and free up space for the staff that we're bringing in. We were able to reduce our footprint quite a bit with some heavy lifting from the DPW. Thank you to them. They'll be coming back to set up some furniture, which is great. I'm asking the board to vote for 7 4-draw filing cabinets, 2 desks, a conference table, and an HP LaserJet 5550 printer surplus, so we can either get rid of these items, sell them, or do what we need to do in order to move on from them. The Transfer Station Action Committee trailer painting request came in this week. So this committee is looking to, and I've updated this, so it is the TSAC, not the TSTF, which is in your packet, and I've corrected it in my own document. So the town invested in these trailers that the town's familiar with for recycling efforts. They've identified it as a priority to paint these and restore them on a regular basis. They're requesting that the select board support a $7,200 maintenance bill, which allow 9 of these to be restored and create this regular cycle. While this revolving account that they use, the sticker fund account, will support this request, because of cash flow and the way that the sticker revenue comes in January, it might create a situation where they need to pay a bill and they don't have that revenue. So they have the money, but the select board might be asked to support a bill if they can't use their own funding to pay for it. So we think we can let it play out and eventually fix itself, but just want to make the board aware, by agreeing to this, there might be a bill you have to pay from your expense account in January. I went to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Annual Summit representing Carlisle. So the BFRT is looking for the select board to support installing uniform signage along the trail. I've also been invited to walk the full 800 feet that are in Carlisle. They said, we'll take you farther. And I said, no, I'm only going to walk the Carlisle section. So they're floating the idea of also adding a speed limit to this important walk. So the uniform signage really simplifies down the rules, makes it something, because a lot of it's not enforceable, just something that is consistent across the trail. And the speed limit's important for the e-bikes and other things that can move faster. Very clear to everybody that bikes can go more than 25, 30 miles an hour as well, not just e-bikes, but it is forcing the conversation. So we're recommending that the board support both these initiatives, the uniform signs and eventually the speed limit. And then lastly, the board received an anonymous donation of $1,000 to support the transfer station. The town accountant must set up a gift fund account for this. So I'm asking the board to authorize the town accountant to set up that fund and give thanks to our generous donor for the help.
Yeah, so we're not supposed to indicate the name of the donor.
That's okay. I mean, I'm impressed.
Yeah, it's pretty great, huh?
Yeah.
So stop there if you want to.
Yeah, so we go back
I'll make the
then?
motion.
So, yeah, so I move that we, I move that we declare 4-drawer filing set 7 4-drawer filing cabinets, 2 desks, 1 conference table, and 1 HP LaserJet 5550 printer as surplus.
Second.
Any discussion?
Question, first of all, do we have a general policy that we go first to charitable organizations or someplace to see if they're interested? Is there any, do we do that ever?
A good question. So I've been trying to devise a policy. So first we should go internally. So is anybody needed in town? And then there should be some type of either Facebook or does anybody want this in the community?
There is that. There's the City in the Woods, which I don't know with municipal officials. We'd have to ask the moderator of that if it's appropriate, but that is the vehicle for that piece, yeah.
And then charitable giving and then to destroy it in certain cases. So that's something I will bring to the board and review policies.
So once
That's
we
why I was
declare,
just-
is this a test case, for example?
Sure. Right now, we just want to get it out of the building.
Yeah. All righty. So are we ready? Let's to do a roll call vote. All right. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Note ally.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Excellent. Motion
Carries.
carries. And who'd like to make the motion for the transfer station painting?
Oh, okay, well, I was gonna move that we support recommendation that there's speed limits and uniformity of signage on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Arnold, I. Nathan?
Brown eye.
Note ally.
Reed, I.
Can I just ask a question? I didn't ask. Can you come back to us with the information on that when you vote or whatever? I'd just be curious on that, on speed limit and stuff.
Yeah, the speed
Okay.
limit's not a thing right now.
Oh,
They're just
okay.
kind of getting consensus from the boards.
Do they, since we've opened it up, I guess we should have had.
I'm sorry.
Well, we're mid-vote, but we're talking. So are e-bikes allowed?
Yes.
But are motorcycles allowed?
No.
So
No.
how do they?
Well, there's no cops, so yes, but you're not supposed to do it. The e-bike is an
unfortunate.
assisted bike. It's not,
Okay.
so it's some
fully-
confusion. So if
Yeah.
you set a speed limit and it helps you get there. So it's not that different than a bike. It just allows me to bike at other speeds that people can do.
For 800 feet.
Right.
All right. Snell, I.
All right, good. Motion carries. Then who would like to make the motion about the transfer station trailer painting? That's number 2.
Oh, yeah. it's not
Asking the
gift.
select board
Okay.
to support the
Sorry,
$7,200 maintenance bill.
Where's
Uh,
this money coming out of?
Pardon?
Where's that money coming out of?
It's eventually going to come out of the sticker fund. But there's, if I understood Ryan correctly, there's not enough funds there right now, but there will be in January. And so just depending on when the work gets done and the bill comes in, we, what would we do? We'd take it out of a select board budget
There-
and then pay it back?
There is enough money, but projecting it out to January 1 with bills that are due, if everything goes the way it's supposed to, there would be a cash flow problem. So once the new sticker revenue came in on January 1, we'd be able to pay the bills. So if we can put the bills off, when the revenue comes in, then it's fine. But in order to allow this expense to happen now, there needs to be backup. So I'm saying the select board would approve from their expense account any overages or differences, which should be, I can't tell you the exact amount, but should not be significant, and we can do it in the budget, according to analysis from myself and the town accountant.
Okay. Does that answer the question, Nathan?
Yes, it does. So we have the money in case this doesn't.
It's not actually, from what I'm understanding, what we're voting for is not for money to pay for the painting of these things, but down the line, if they run short of money, that we would authorize payment of the whatever else they have. I'm just wondering why we need
No,
to do
it's the
this.
sentence, the TSAC is requesting the select board to support a $7,200 maintenance bill.
Just, okay, so it's not,
Do we control the sticker fund money?
They do.
They do. So they don't
Who-
really
who,
need.
they,
it.
the
No,
TSAC? Well, for an
they
expenditure
don't.
like
Gary
this,
does.
really, it's Gary, what, when Tom Bellata, the chair of the TSAC, talked this over with Gary, Gary said, yeah, I'm comfortable with you going ahead, but I would like the select board to approve this.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, there's Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, everyone.
Tom Ballard is actually on the call.
If I could just comment, when I met with Gary, Gary agrees the money is in the sticker fund, but given the nature of this expense, he wanted support from the select board before going ahead with it. He agrees it's a good expense.
Okay.
Okay, so does somebody want to make
I
a motion?
move that the select board authorize $7,200 for the painting of, is it 9 dumpsters? Or
Yeah.
dumpsters, okay.
9, right, Tom?
It's 9 plus the hoppers, the 3 hoppers. This basically is everything that's in highest use.
Okay. That's what I move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have 2 questions. One is, I see the invoice also refers to 8 remaining dumpsters. Is that to be done some other time?
Not clear. The problem is that a lot of those dumpsters are in really bad repair. I walked around the transfer station with the painting company, and it's not clear that some of those are worth painting. The replacement cost of a dumpster is around $10,000. So fortunately, Gary doesn't use all of those. He actually only substitutes about 3 trailers of the extra 9 he has for normal use. Some of those have just got to be salvaged at some point, just tossed for scrap. But that's the concept here is that Gary catches up because he's behind in painting these things, and then from this point forward maintains them so that the core set of dumpsters is in good repair. He's got to look later at what's he going to do with those extra dumpsters, salvage them.
Okay.
He may at some point need to replace a dumpster or 2 down the road.
Good, thank you. And my last question, did I miss it sometime? The TSTF became the TSAC? Is that what
Yes.
happened? It did just.
Yes,
change
they,
name, right?
yeah, when we
Finished it.
created a new committee with a new charter.
There we go.
Yeah, and they took on this new name.
Thank
right.
you very much. All set.
I
Okay,
have just
we're-
one thing, if I may.
Sure.
So the sticker fund, I mean, I don't recall us ever like voting, yes, you can, do hazardous waste day or anything like that. From what I understand, from what Tom was just saying, I mean, Gary knows he's the one that can authorize this. He just wanted us to weigh in on whether or not we agree that we should be, as a town, spending the $7,500, but not actually asking us to authorize the expenditure from the sticker fund, because I don't know that that's us, right?
Right.
Yeah, Gary ultimately has to sign off on the invoice. He just wants to know he has your support.
I think.
Yeah, so it's just like, do we support it, not do we authorize it?
Yeah, so
That's what he's asking for, yeah.
want to amend your motion to say we support it rather than
That's all I said
authorize?
is not
I think you said
authorized.
authorize.
I amend my motion to say the select board supports the painting of the usable dumpsters up to an amount of, in the amount of around $7,200.
And I will resecond that.
Okay, so now I believe we're ready to vote. Roll call, Arnold, I.
Right.
What I?
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
All right, that passes. And then finally, we have the number 4, which is to authorize the town accountant to set up a gift fund account for I guess this is for the transfer station,
Yeah,
correct? Okay,
I move that we accept this gift and that we authorize the town accountant to set up a gift fund account. And that-
Second.
And that we thank the generous donor, anonymous donor, for their donation.
yes, this is,
Yes, we do.
yeah. All right, any discussion? This hopefully it'll start a new trend here in donations.
Yes, there you go.
All right, roll call vote. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
With gratitude to the anonymous donor, Modell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Excellent. So those have all carried.
All right, sorry to complicate the discussion.
Mr.
My brain
McLean.
just works in
No, that's
financial
good.
mechanisms, and I understand it can get murky. So,
Yeah.
all right, the staff recognition. So this week I'd like to recognize a lot of people, and I'm happy some of the department heads are reaching out to me to discuss some of the things that they're doing. So I actually met today with our youth services librarians, Jen and Talene, and talked to them about their summer reading program and other programs. So went to the library, which I like to do, and met with them. Their program was called Read Beyond the Beaten Path. It had its highest participation since 2016, with 727 people attending live programs, 330 visitors participating in self-paced programs, and 148 participants completing book bingos and reading challenges. And I thought book bingo was easy, but they explained it to me. You actually have to read a whole book to get like the mark. And one of the adult ones is like 16. I don't know who has time to read 16 books, but sounds amazing. Our assistant treasurer and tax collector, Tara, recently earned her master's degree, and that was floated around town hall, congratulating her in accounting from UMass Lowell. So to complete this program while working full-time for us demonstrates a significant commitment to self-development. A lot of our staff does that type of self-development. Tara is just the most recent, and we congratulate her. Our building commissioner, John, didn't want any recognition. So of course his peers said that's not cool with them. So he actually burned his vacation time to volunteer at the Build the Castle event. He did more than 13 hours per day and was a force for that event from what I hear. And the staff was adamant that John be recognized for this and that be told to you that that's what he did with his personal time. Kim received her Certified Mass Municipal Collector, or CMMC certification after completing her required coursework. This keeps her active for the next 5 years. She also has the Certified Governmental Accountant certificate, so she is well credentialed. And then our health assistant, Chris, recently completed the Ironman Emilia Romagna in Italy. I'm not Italian, you can tell. Completing 2.4 mile swim,
I don't know.
112-mile bike, and a 26.2-mile run in 15 hours. So this tremendous athletic feat was recognized by Linda when Chris returned to work on Wednesday, and we all went there, and Chris was like, this is why I don't tell people, because everybody asks, why would you run and bike and swim that far? I believe this is her 15th Ironman, so pretty cool fun fact about Chris.
Yeah.
Couple notes for the board. Tomorrow I'll be serving military day. They've asked me to come in and do some inventories, etc. This is rare, but it happens. So try to keep the board updated on that. Has to be done by the close of the federal fiscal year, which is October 1st. So I put it off as long as I can, and tomorrow is the day. I'll also be attending the statewide MARPA conference on Thursday in Worcester. This is a lot of important initiatives from the governor's office. This is more for the public than the board, because I know you know this, but the reason to go to these events and be connected at the state level, especially this year, is the transfer in power from one governor to the other is guaranteed. So how that's going to change programming, grant funding, and the like after a long time with the same governor is important. So I'm trying to stay connected to that community to better inform the stuff that happens here in the board, of course. And then your upcoming meetings, as you know, are all regularly scheduled.
What's MARPA?
It's MAPC, which you met with today, combined with, you got me. I gotta look it up.
Metropolitan area,
Regional
Planning Authority.
regional plan.
Yeah, conference, and then DLS is the Department of Local Services is combining with them to provide updates. So it's their conference and DLS is hijacking it, and it's gonna be a lot of good information.
Just on our meetings,
Yeah, can I take a couple of minutes?
well, I'd want to particularly note the changes that we,
Right. I have all
just specific to the select board for the for now, if we could, rather than all the other stuff we put on there. But so,
Right.
because when we get into, so the reason the November meeting is November 15th, so this is different, is because the election is on the 8th. The 8th is actually the second Tuesday of November. So we propose that we would move that meeting to the following Tuesday, which is November 15th. And I just want to make sure that that is going to be possible for at least a quorum of our members.
I'm available.
You're available. And Nathan, will that work for you?
Sorry, I am looking. Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay. And then we also made some changes going into, so the end of November, because Thanksgiving is in that month, we went to
29?
the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, which is the
29.
29th. And again, just want to double check that we have a quorum for that. I don't know if anybody has plans to be away the week after Thanksgiving.
So I'm sorry, you're saying that
So,
it's moved to the 15th?
yeah, so with the one on the 8th would be canceled because that's election day. And we would have our select board meeting on the 15th that month and also on the 29th, which means we would also not meet on the 22nd. So our normal second and fourth Tuesdays would instead become the third and fifth Tuesdays in November.
For some reason, I already have them as those days, so they work fine.
Okay.
Okay, and then in December, we would get back to
We wouldn't
the
get back.
second
It'd be the first one,
Tuesday.
12/6. No, the first one,
Mm,
12/6.
We did make that change?
That's what we noted.
You sure?
Really?
Because that would be 1 week after the 29th.
I know, but the reason we said because the 27th would be out. So we proposed, can I hand this out? Because it would be better if we had the list. I thought.
Right, is the, oh,
That's got all the other stuff
Well, you're all
on
the
it,
way
doesn't
halfway
it?
through it already.
Yeah.
so We don't have.
No, I was just trying to do the select board meetings through the end of the year. Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
But anyway, we're on it
Nathan
now,
doesn't,
so-
okay, so, we propose then meeting on the 6th and the 20th.
Right.
in
The question,
December?
right. The
Okay.
reason is because the 27th is like a dead week.
Right, that's the
people will
week
be away.
between
Oh, it's
Christmas
between-
Day and
yeah.
New Year's,
Right.
so.
So that would put you at the
But-
20th.
how about if we just propose to meet on the 13th, once that month?
Well, because that's the next phase. We have a lot to do.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
we,
I'm just-
we would like to try to continue 2 meetings a month.
All right.
There's just a lot. If we're gonna try to reach all these
Getting into the
boards and
budget.
committees and budgets.
Yeah. So
If
in
it's too-
December, then the proposal would be, we would meet on the 6th and the 20th, which would be the first and the third Tuesdays.
but,
I cannot meet on the 6th.
You cannot? Okay.
And maybe we just move it.
Anybody else?
And maybe we just move it to the 13th. I'm okay combining that if that's the consensus, because then we said the third of right after New
Right.
Year's, so let's say,
Okay, let's stick with that Tuesday, the 13th in December. We'll just have one December meeting.
okay. Yep, okay.
And then just so people get it on their calendars, we would talk about then having a select board meeting the first Tuesday of
We
January.
would have 3 in
To
January.
get us back, yeah, we'd have 3 in January to get us back on the schedule.
So 3 in January, which would
Yeah.
Let me,
on the 3rd, 17th and 31st?
yeah, let me give you guys. this,
Okay,
'cause
but
I think
pass that out now.
give this
Okay,
to Travis.
Nathan, but has Nathan
Well,
seen this?
it's
Was it in the packet?
I
Okay.
mean, it's inaccurate in the packet.
Oh.
That's for you. Oh, because we just changed it.
Oh, okay. But otherwise, it's
This is helpful.
accurate.
Yeah, let
Okay.
me- If you can give me a few minutes to, I spent a lot of time. on this.
Yeah, I looked at it and I didn't know what it was, so.
Well, and I reformatted because in the packet, it's not formatted the way that makes sense. But if I can just go through it, everybody has one. So on the first page, and I apologize, Nathan, you could look in the packet for part of it, but we went down and we set the meeting dates based on the calendar, like Barney's saying. And then all the way out. And then part of the reason for doing that, which is the next column, is to try to begin to pencil in which boards and committees we want to see for various reasons. And then the next column, the middle column, is kind of the beginning of sort of the calendar of run up to town meeting, like when you have to open the warrant and when you have the budget hearing and blah, 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 blah. And a few other things that go in there. And we have to flesh that out. Ryan, you gave me a new calendar as of today, which didn't quite mesh, so we have to get together on that. But basically, that would be sort of the metronome, right? That's the things that have to get done. And then as we go forward, the column second from the right is all the other items as they accrue. So you can see we just did 927. If you go down to 1011, you can already see we've got some things, Greeno Barn. We've got the ATA appointment that we just pushed off. Regionalization, maybe we don't have, maybe that actually moved up. I may have that wrong. But, and then we started in the budget process in October. So the reason for me giving you this now is really for you to look at it think about it, give feedback, and then we can keep the regular calendar, not for deliberation tonight, just
Yeah.
here it is, it's in the packet, but like, so you understand it. The document that's behind it, and by the way, as you see in the bottom, we're proposing May 1st for town meeting and things back away from May 1st. And again, look at it. We can talk about it next time. Then the second page is maybe actually a little more interesting, is the scorecard when we asked for people's sort of priorities of which boards and committees you each considered important to see. And I highlighted the ones where we had sort of consensus about top 5. And then on the right is kind of when we've penciled those in at this point. So these two documents kind of go together, and we want your feedback. Back to Kate's point about crack and river stewardship and land stewardship and bog and blah, blah, blah. It's all kind of, there's a block where we're kind of at least proposing at this point, we have some kind of land use summit. We put in January, it doesn't have to be January, but get all those guys together. That may be unwieldy. So that's something, Travis, to think about, but to try to capture that and get those guys all in the same place. That may not be the right model. So that's it. And then at the bottom of that page are the other ones, which nobody put as a priority, but we have to again think about trying to touch all those people as well. So that's what I got. Thank you.
This is great, David. You did a lot of good work on this.
Yeah, thanks, David. That was great. I have just one comment about that third column. I think it was the third column. Kind of the other things covered. I think it's great for us to plan to have, lots of meetings with the committees and boards as we talked about last time. What I'm not seeing a lot of in there is budget preparation. I see this budget in there a few times, but I think that last year we decided that we wanted to meet with the people who, we wanted to meet more with the requesters of the funding before it went to FinCom, just to make sure that, there was support on our end before FinCom was trying to do it. And I'm just wondering, should we pre-schedule times for that, or how would we address that? Because that could take quite a bit of our time over these next 3 or 4 months.
You're talking about we're going to meet with FinCom.
Like
we're
somebody's coming to us, and somebody's going to FinCom and saying, we want another person. Right.
Okay,
We
so
said
right,
last
that
year
was my
we said
question.
we're not gonna, we don't want them going to FinCom first. We want them coming to us. Or if they have another big ticket item, I don't think we necessarily have to talk to a board that's coming, with a general 2% increase or whatever. But anybody who's coming to
Okay,
us
I
with new
understand.
staff or something.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think if you could feed that back, after we did this, in fact, it was only today you did this, or maybe yesterday.
So that's a working document.
Yeah. So the Ryan in parallel is starting to develop a working document of the process from the inside, right? So
Budget.
it's budget, but it's more like Kim and the free cash and tax rate. So we have to merge all that, and I think your point is excellent. So I think let's think about how we go out. I mean, if you ask for requests, and of course requests come out of the woodwork. So I don't know.
Well,
maybe
it's
we-
maybe done a little different this year, though, because of the way Ryan's trying to consolidate the town department requests first,
right.
right? And so that would give us or Ryan
Meeting
could give
Friday
us
on
a
budget, right? So maybe we
heads
could
up.
start thinking about
Yeah, I
that.
think our big thing was just if anybody's going for something big, or if they're going for a staff person or something, we want to know it before it goes to FinCom, because we don't want them wasting their time.
Right.
That's a fair statement. So
Yeah.
let's take it on. I can't process it right this moment, but we
Yep,
got to
that's
come
fair.
up with some procedure that works.
Yeah.
Reach out, or at least informally reach out to those that might have extraordinary items and put them in the list. So, okay.
I had a question about the short window of opening and closing, between opening and closing the town warrant, and why it is, we
2
have.
months?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have some, like, CPC might want to have more time I don't know. I'm just,
Nope, the CPC is not gonna do what happened last year.
well,
So
okay, well,
it's gonna
that was
be,
kind of why I
I
put
know.
CPC on my list of why,
Right.
of people that I thought we should be seeing.
yeah,
But
yeah. No, I hear you though, but that's, I think, well, we can
Right.
talk more about that,
Okay,
the
well-
whole question of the warrant schedule and also the town meeting date. I mean, we should at some point formally vote on when we want to have a town meeting and then we can,
Yeah, and then I think sooner rather than later, we need to then publish this schedule so that
yes,
groups like the CPC and anybody else who wants anything on the warrant
right.
has
No.
plenty of advance notice because
Yes.
it was a moving target and nobody knew when and where and why
Yeah.
or how, and
Yeah, it was a mess.
so this is good, but I just don't know if we need to compress it this much.
Well, that's why,
That's all I'm
please,
saying.
please give I mean, deliberation takes forever, right? And so if you provide feedback on these, and I'll send the electronic sheets. Have I
Yeah,
not
the
sent them?
updated, well, you did, but since it's now,
Okay, I'll listen, I'll update it and send everybody an electronic file
yeah,
and just mark in red or something, and then we'll compile it and then we'll come back next meeting and say, okay, maybe by next meeting, we'll have something we can vote on, finalize.
but you, when you say mark it up, but you want then people to send back to you their
You or
markups
me,
before,
okay, we'll decide that,
but
but
send it back
send it back
electronically.
electronically so we
yeah,
can make
between
soup out
now
of
and
it.
the
then
next
we say,
meeting.
okay,
Yeah.
this was the consensus.
Okay.
We're only gonna have one meeting in December. We can't meet here. We should do this then, and we'll do our best. It's an
Yeah.
active document, but,
Right.
we'll do our best.
And I would just ask all of us to particularly pay attention to the select board dates on here to see if that's gonna work, so we can get those settled. Yeah,
Agreed.
for sure.
Thank you.
David, if
Okay.
that's an
Barney-
updated document that you just passed around, could you email it around?
Yeah, I'm gonna email, I'm gonna fix it tonight or tomorrow and I'll email,
To all
Okay.
of us.
I'll
Thank you very
email
much.
everybody. Everybody will have it by tomorrow, I hope.
Can I
All right, thank
say
you.
something, Marnie, quickly?
Yeah.
So to David's point on process, I think this is great. So our time is so valuable. I think that it's important that when these committees come, and I said it earlier, it's clear what they're supposed to do, how they're
Yes.
supposed to prepare and everything. And my suggestion would be, because we all have assigned liaison positions, that the liaison who is like, municipal facilities is the next one. I am the liaison to that. I will reach out and we have a meeting and tell them what the expectation is. And just so that I'm clear, and maybe we all can be clear, but we're going to say, we want to review your charter. So hopefully we can get that in not only the select board packet ahead of time for everyone to see, but also the component parts of the master plan. And
would be relevant.
provide that to the committee as well. So ahead of time, they can review that, they can review their charter. And then, I think there was a third question, which was, or maybe you had four.
Well, it's your,
Needs.
it's,
Needs.
well,
right.
first it's charter, is that right?
Yeah.
Then what are your goals? How do they relate to the master plan? And how can we help? Right?
Charter, goals, master plan, and then how do we help? Okay. So I'll do that for
That's a
the
good idea.
municipal facilities, and then we just each do it.
Yeah, I mean, these are notional and we have not, to my knowledge, gone back to these committees yet and given them the dates, except for
No, we
obviously.
haven't done it with
So,
anybody. So
but
MFC that's a question, we
Is
need
that
to reach.
scheduled
fact,
definitely?
Maybe yes, we would like to have them come. They have not been asked as far as I know. Right, MFC. So do you want to do the asking or you want?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
great.
think
put
for
it on
each
yeah, good.
liaison should.
Right,
that's
so
part of
Lisa,
our
let's get
roles,
that one done
liaison.
and that'll give us a little time.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking to finance committee this week. And so they'll presumably will have, if that's the date, you had a slightly different date, I think, but
yeah.
we'll get them sorted out and that'll give us at least a month and then we'll
Yeah.
hopefully
But
get
that's
this
an
sort of
excellent-
solidified and we'll
Yeah.
put it out there.
Travis, would you mind just writing up those 4 questions so we're all, whatever language you want to use, so we're all using the same language with our. the
Sure, I
committee
think
we're
you already wrote them
liaison
up, David.
I'll write him on
You
this.
already wrote 'em. Just send it with your email.
I'm going to send it with my
Okay,
email.
That'd be great.
excellent. Okay, good, good.
Perfect.
All right. let's,
How he delegated. The
uh,
chair gave him a job and he's like, no, this guy's very skillful.
okay, we are at 9:54, I'd like to point out, and so, we do have liaison reports on here, cemetery deed transfers and minutes to approve, then the executive session. So are people okay staying, at least a half an hour? I mean, right now we're at our 5 minutes over the.
Do we need
didn't even do
cemetery
the
deeds
executive.
tonight? We have to get those done. That takes time,
Or
right?
keep dying.
Yeah, nobody is allowed to die.
Well, these
I would
Uh,
propose we do the cemetery deeds, but we don't do the minutes
yeah, okay.
Okay,
or the liaison reports unless anybody has anything big.
yeah. All right, are people comfortable with that? That, I'm fine with that.
All right.
Okay, so the cemetery deed transfers, it's page 25 in your packet. Somebody have
There's
that
two of
pulled up
them.
that they want to
I
make the,
move that the select board vote to transfer land in the public burial ground at the Green Cemetery described as follows: deed 792, lot D, 186, grave 3 to Paul Gill, 166 Judy Farm Road in Carlisle, and deed 793, lot D, 288, grave 1, 2, and 3 to David Spots at 132 Hartwell Road, Carlisle.
Second,
Second,
any discussion? Roll call vote then. Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Modell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we are going to postpone the approval of the minutes, and therefore we are ready to move into executive session. May I
Can
have
I-
a motion?
Before you do, I don't have a liaison report, but we would be remiss even at this late hour to not recognize two momentous events that happened this weekend.
Okay.
One,
Yes.
the Mosquito celebrated its 50th anniversary. And I think we're talking about perhaps a proclamation at some point honoring, really, we're so blessed to have that paper. And then secondly, and it was alluded to, but the playground Castle was a masterful planning. And I'd particularly like to recognize Brian Waterston, the chair, and Deepa Chungi, the vice chair, who it's just amazing how they pulled it off. And
Yes. And they
I
had a
can't say enough
soft
about it.
opening Sunday, which the children and parents absolutely loved. It was just fantastic. So yeah, we'll have more to come on that, I'm sure.
Working there on Thursday in the rain and thunderstorms. I
Yeah.
mean, during the entire day.
Yeah, I'm sure that they will tally up the volunteer hours and all the other ways
And all
people
the dollar
contributed.
hours,
And that, right, the,
equipment and everything.
yeah, everything that happened. So, yeah.
So thank
Good-
you for that.
Good news over the weekend. Yeah, thank you, David, for that. All right, may I have a motion to move into executive session and not to return?
So moved.
So moved. Second,
All those in favor? Arnold, I.
Brown eye.
Modell, I.
Reed, I.
Snell, I.
All right, we are, our
Up to you.
meeting has now ended, our open